Chapter 2-1 The Supreme Strange Magic Notes. Vibranium was a rare metal in the Marvel world, second only to adamantium in hardness. Its molecular structure made it physically unable to transmit force, which let it absorb enormous amounts of heat, energy, and kinetic impact. For defensive purposes, vibranium was unmatched. Tony Stark had used small amounts in his Iron Man armor, but Li Ming had had no reliable source until now, so he'd had to be extremely frugal when building his suits. After solving production problems in the last mission world, Li Ming had also fixed the supply issue for high-end materials. He could finally focus on crafting his own armor without shortages. Li Ming continued learning magic from Supreme Strange. Kamar Taj had recovered from the Scarlet Witch's influence. Wanda had done a lot of damage, but with her sanity restored, she'd been able to help the other sorcerers let go of their grudges. What made her happiest were her two sons, Tommy and Billy, who matched her hopes perfectly. She asked Li Ming to establish legal identities for them, found a school for them in a nearby town, and spent every spare moment with them when she wasn't required at Kamar Taj. Seeing the multiverse had changed Strange. He'd personally witnessed the destruction of two worlds because of his own arrogance. Though he wasn't officially Sorcerer Supreme yet, he carried the demeanor and gravity of one. America Chavez decided to stay in this universe, to train at Kamar Taj, to learn better control of her powers, and to use them in defense of the multiverse. Just like Li, she said. 2 months later, Li Ming's Supreme Strange Magic Lu upgraded to level 3. He calculated the remaining time and realized that if he delayed any longer, his mission rating might slip below C. He decided to end the mission for now. The official reason was that to help Supreme Strange find his way home more quickly, Li Ming planned to travel through parallel universes again. To make sure Li Ming could keep studying even while traveling, Strange compiled everything he'd taught into a single magic notebook and gifted it to Li Ming. The notebook contained Strange's practical insights and accumulated experience, so Li Ming could continue his studies uninterrupted in other worlds. For Li Ming, the notebook was more valuable than the Darkhold or the Book of Vishanti. To curb impatience, Strange enchanted the notebook. Li Ming could only unlock the next section of knowledge after mastering each stage of magic. Although Li Ming hadn't formally become Strange's disciple, Strange had fulfilled his duty as a teacher. Li Ming, who didn't have much of a conscience, felt genuinely moved by Strange's sincerity and decided to help him save his world. During those 2 months, Li Ming also amassed a sizable reserve of vibranium ore and established a full production line, from mining to refining. His method of completing the mission was simple: use America's portal ability, step into another multiverse, and step back. After one such trip, the system pinged. Ding, mission complete, portal opening. He returned to the sea route and found another freighter loaded with vibranium and the new 2.0 liquid nanometal he'd spent months processing. Compared to the previous version, the 2.0 liquid nanometal incorporated vibranium, producing a major leap in defensive performance. Still, Li Ming felt his greatest gains, aside from America's portal ability, were Supreme Strange's magic notes. Scanning. Scan complete. Abyss favored 1 is unharmed, no treatment needed. Main mission, Multiverse of Madness completed. Overall mission evaluation, C. Rewards obtained, 2,000 points, 2 free attribute points. It was Li Ming's second C-rank mission evaluation, but his gains from these worlds were immense. In his personal world, he cared less about mission grades and more about tangible benefits. Abyss had the same attitude. Every successful acquisition of a dimension travel ability yielded new world origin rewards, and Abyss's returns far outstripped any high-rank mission payout. Li Ming had long stopped worrying that a low evaluation might reduce rewards. His relationship with Abyss had evolved from a mission-based dependency into a cooperative one. If Li Ming needed something, Abyss would find a way to provide it. He suspected the Resident Evil world, which fit his needs so well, wasn't mere chance. As usual, he added the free attribute points to Mental. His character panel showed significant changes. Constitution, 125. Agility, 441. Mental, 208. Bloodline, Spider-Man, Wanda Bloodline. Skills, Fighting level 10, Shooting level 10, Firearms Mastery level 10, John Wick Combat Template level 9, Lightning Chain level 10, Supreme Strange Magic level 3, Staff Sword Mastery level 10, Source Power Absorption. Superpowers: Telekinesis E rank, Self-Healing B rank, Mach 2 D rank, Probability Manipulation A rank, Exclusive Source Power Advancement level 3, Source Power Application level 3, Mental Power Forging Method. Items: Gotham Scepter, Space Necklace. Points. Under Strange's guidance, Li Ming's self-created mental power forging method upgraded to Elvebot 2. Combined with the mental gains from learning magic, Li Ming's mental attribute had finally passed 200. Still, the further he progressed, the more he realized that raw attributes didn't tell the whole story. Scarlet Witch might not have higher static attributes than him, her mental rating might even be lower, but her power was world-destroying. Bloodlines and innate superpowers mattered more than numbers, and Li Ming had now fully integrated everything he'd been taught. His fighting and shooting had reached level 10. Kamartaj's many close combat mages had given him no shortage of sparring partners. Ding, Abyss Favored 1 Reincarnator level is Tier 3. Loot exchange can be activated. Do you wish to exchange? Can it raise the rating to S rank? Li Ming asked. Ding, Umbrella Corporation technology plus Vibranium and Vibranium-related technology can raise the mission evaluation to A rank. Supreme Strange's magic notes can raise the mission evaluation to S rank, but exchange is not recommended. Li Ming nodded. Supreme Strange's notes were irreplaceable, and Abyss judged their utility to be greater in his hands, so it advised against exchanging them. By the way, have Jerome and his squad completed their second mission? He asked, turning his attention to his subordinates. Ding, Jerome's squad has returned. Mission completed. Do you wish to view? Li Ming wanted to see what mischief those villains had gotten up to. View. 2-2, Gotham Villains versus the League of Assassins. 202 Gotham Villains versus the League of Assassins. Chapter 202, Gotham Villains versus the League of Assassins. World ID 2018, connected. Current world unexplored. Main mission, League of Assassins. Mission objective, prevent Wesley from killing his father and destroy the League of Assassins. Mission rating will be determined by completion time. League of Assassins? Are we back in Gotham? Jerome grinned when he saw the mission title, then grabbed a passerby who was holding a newspaper. New York? His face fell and he let the struggling man go. Boring. There's a League of Assassins in Gotham? Poison Ivy, just Ivy, asked. Mad Hatter, Tetch, looked even more confused. Didn't you know about that big event that happened in Gotham before we came here? I know about the Court of Owls. That thing was everywhere in Gotham, Ivy said. Poison Ivy frowned. Is there something I don't know about? Tetch shrugged. If you could join the Reincarnation Squad, you'd think you'd know everything, he said. The League of Assassins was the force behind the Court of Owls. So the Gotham gang didn't really control Gotham either? Ivy suddenly felt the king of Gotham's reputation slip. Realizing Li Ming could see her every move in the mission world, she clamped her mouth shut. Tetch shook his head. It seems you really don't know anything. Among the 5 members of the Reincarnation Squad, Jerome, Fish, Scarecrow, Mad Hatter, and Ivy, most had been part of Li Ming's plan to deal with the Court of Owls and understood the underlying power plays. Ivy, who had always worked the streets and mingled with the powerful since gaining her abilities, had been blissfully unaware of those intricacies. If you're going to talk, say it clearly, she snapped, or I won't mind planting a few flowers on your neck. Her face hardened. She hated being left in the dark. Don't let Poison Ivy's mature facade fool you. She was only 15 or 16. Mad Hatter quickly raised his hands in surrender, but Fish beat him to it. The League was defeated by the Gotham gang, and their leader was killed by the King of Gotham, she explained. Fish had ambitions to lead the Reincarnation Squad and saw Ivy as someone she wanted to win over. She needed Ivy's strength, and Ivy's brute power was the best among them, even if Ivy wasn't the brightest. Ivy fell silent. The King of Gotham was still the King of Gotham. Then the Abyss chimed in. Its influence felt like a cold whisper in their heads. Abyss faction effect activated. Influence factor. Effect: the greater the Reincarnator's influence, the greater the world bonus received. The faction effect is finally here. I thought we wouldn't get this, Li Ming muttered. World bonus. Does anyone know what that is? No one did. Jerome shrugged. He didn't care about faction effects, he just wanted to have fun. Li Ming, however, raised an eyebrow. World bonus? Does that mean the protagonist's halo? Ding, it can be understood that way. Humph. No wonder the evaluation took so long. This is tailor-made for them, Li Ming said. The power of a protagonist's halo was obvious. The greater the member's influence, the stronger the halo they generated. For a group of villains, influence was influence. Infamy counted as much as fame. The more notorious they were, the bigger the world bonus. And this world, Wesley, League of Assassins. Li Ming quickly pieced together which world the reincarnation squad had landed in. Wanted, also called I Killed My Father to Avenge My Father, was a sci-fi action movie starring Angelina Jolie and James McAvoy. The famous curved bullets that bend, came from that film. Li Ming recalled the plot. Wesley, a spineless office worker with no parents and little ability, silently endured insults from his corpulent boss and was cuckolded by a friend and his girlfriend. One day in a supermarket, a beautiful woman told him his father was alive. He learned his supposed father had been a top assassin and had been killed by a traitor within the organization. While Wesley was still confused, the traitor appeared. The beautiful woman said she was there to kill Wesley, then fought the traitor. After twists, Wesley followed the beautiful woman to the League of Assassins headquarters. There, Sloane, the League's leader, told him his father had hidden his survival to give Wesley a peaceful life. But now a traitor nicknamed Cross had appeared, and Wesley could no longer live safely. To avoid being killed by Cross, he had to accept training from the League and become as deadly as his father. Wesley protested he wasn't cut out for it, until Sloane had someone point a gun at him and forced him to shoot a fly's wings off. Cornered, he did it. Only then did he realize his long-standing symptoms, an accelerated heart rate and slowed perception, weren't anxiety, but a unique bloodline ability of top assassins. Still, Wesley initially chose to give up. Assassin life was far removed from his ordinary existence. Back in reality, he faced his boss's insults, his friend's betrayal, and his girlfriend's infidelity. In the League's world, a beautiful assassin pretended to be his new girlfriend, right in front of his real girlfriend. Ultimately, he accepted training to avenge his father. The training began with honing his ability. Wesley's bloodline heightened his physical fitness and reaction time, and he learned the elite skill of the curved bullet. He was beaten black and blue every day, bathed in black tech recovery medicine, and woke fully healed, over and over, until his strength surpassed many veteran assassins. Next came organizational indoctrination. Sloane showed Wesley a loom that supposedly predicted those who would become extremely evil. The League's mission, Sloane said, was to kill these future wrongdoers in advance. Wesley believed him and hunted Cross relentlessly, but Wesley was inexperienced. During a firefight on a train, the train derailed. As it was about to plunge into an abyss, Cross reached out and saved Wesley. Wesley didn't hesitate. The moment Cross grabbed him, Wesley shot him in the heart. As Wesley prepared to deliver the final shot, Cross spoke, revealing Sloane's lies. Cross claimed to be Wesley's true father, and that the person Wesley had pursued was actually Fox, the beautiful assassin by his side. Fox confirmed Cross's words and revealed that her mission had been to kill Wesley after he killed Cross. Wesley, however, had been trained well. He managed to escape and, with help from Cross's allies, uncovered the truth. Sloane had been the real traitor all along. The loom had predicted Sloane's name long ago, but Sloane had falsified the prophecy and used the League to eliminate rivals for his own gain. Cross tried to destroy the corrupted League. Wesley obtained Cross's plan to annihilate the organization and executed it perfectly. During the final confrontation, Wesley held up a strip of cloth with Sloane's name on it and exposed the truth. Sloane countered by producing a list of names, orders implicating all the assassins present. He told them that to uphold their creed, they could either kill themselves or kill Wesley and pretend nothing had happened. Most chose to save themselves. Only Fox refused. She had always believed she killed for justice, but with her faith shattered, she fired the most perfect curved bullet. The shot looped in a circle, pierced the temples of the assembled assassins, and finally curved back to hit her. Fox died along with the others. In the end, Sloane was killed by Wesley, with the same kind of long-range bending bullet that had killed Wesley's father. Normal reincarnators completing the mission would usually tip the scales toward reunion, helping Wesley and Cross reconcile father and son, then work together to destroy the League's headquarters. The Jerome squad were not normal reincarnators. Prevent Wesley from killing his father? Jerome said lazily. Too easy. We'll just help him kill him. Thanks to reader 2203331350 for the monthly ticket support. Hey, everyone, please also toss in a recommendation ticket. Salute. Chapter 203. Jerome's squad never completes missions peacefully. Every reincarnation squad's first mission is to find the target, and Jerome's squad was no different. Who is Wesley? Jerome stood in front of the police station's data terminal, flicking a folder into the air and letting the papers scatter across the desk. Too many Wesleys, he growled. He was getting impatient. Wesley was a common name. Searching with only a given name was like hunting for a needle in a haystack. If we can't find the target right away, we should prepare for battle in advance so we can act the moment we locate them, Fish said from the side. That's what a leader does. Don't dump everything on your subordinates. She spoke with a guiding tone, thinly veiling her doubt about Jerome's leadership. I already had the chief of police gather all officers to watch for major incidents across the city and start asking about the League of Assassins. Jerome's squad excelled at controlling minds. Bending the city's official forces was effortless for them. He grinned and shrugged. Getting the most out of our team is leadership too, he said, patting Fish on the shoulder like a fond superior. Looks like you're doing just fine, ha ha ha! Fish's smile froze. She'd been outmaneuvered. Poison Ivy spoke up then, not to rescue Fish, but because she couldn't stand Jerome's smug confidence. Liming, Your Excellency said that from this world onward, we can freely choose our leader. Oh, then let's have a democratic election. Jerome immediately raised his hand. I vote for Jerome. Scarecrow raised his hand next. He was already a member of Jerome's Joker gang. That gave Jerome 2 votes. Mad Hatter looked around. Unless Fish, Poison Ivy, and he all voted together, they couldn't outvote Jerome. Tetch, Mad Hatter, thought Fish might make a better leader, but Fish had been uninterested in helping him find his sister Alice back in Gotham, which left a grudge. And Poison Ivy? He figured he could do better than her. Realizing his vote might be crucial, he fell quiet, waiting to see which side would court him. Vote for me. Women help women, Fish said, turning on the charm with Poison Ivy. Ivy bristled. She'd become who she was in part because of the freaks under Fish in Gotham. She hadn't forgotten. Besides, Ivy had contributed the most in their previous mission world. By contribution, she ought to be leader. Let's compete fairly, Fish suggested. She knew Jerome would always be unbeatable in a straight team vote with Scarecrow at his side. How do we compete? Jerome asked with interest. A team martial arts tournament? Fish shook her head. We're not barbarians. We'll compete on influence. We'll each build gangs in this city, and whoever has the most influence at the end becomes leader. All means allowed, so long as none of us, our squad members, are put in danger, she added. Reincarnation squad members were precious assets to Li Ming and the Abyss. Killing a teammate brought severe penalties nobody wanted to provoke. Jerome's eyes brightened. An inter-city war between the Joker gang and the Fish gang. Ha ha ha, I accept. In Gotham, the Joker gang and the Fish gang had been 2 of the most powerful factions, and though Li Ming's oversight had prevented a decisive victory before, Jerome loved the idea of a rematch. He and Fish looked at the others. Scarecrow agreed instantly. Mad Hatter hesitated. Poison Ivy, however, nodded. She had long envied gang bosses in Gotham, and now with potent powers of her own, she was eager to try. Tetch, seeing Ivy agree, had no choice but to follow. We need a truce period. How about 3 days? Fish proposed. No conflicts during that time. Jerome thought for a second. You're all familiar with gangs, I'm not. Seems a bit unfair. Ivy had a different take. You did the most work last world. We all saw it. How about giving you an extra day? 4 days of truce? 5 days, Jerome interrupted suddenly. When everyone looked at him, he waved his hand and laughed. I'm still the leader, so I'll give my lovely Ivy an extra day. Ha ha ha. Fine. 5 days. Fish agreed, and no one else objected. Ivy softened slightly toward Jerome. Fish stiffened inwardly. She had planned to curry Ivy's goodwill by offering the extra day herself, but Jerome had stolen the gesture. Still, Fish wasn't too worried. Poison Ivy's mind, while powerful, was simple, and Fish thought she could sway her later. "All right, see you in 3 days," Fish said dismissively. Mad Hatter blinked, then looked around, and suddenly understood. Every officer in the police station had been under Fish's control. She had already started planning. Jerome barked out a laugh that rang through the station. "Fish is Fish. You'd already planned to build influence by taking the police headquarters, hadn't you?" Poison Ivy, slow to catch on, finally realized Fish hadn't been bested. She'd simply gotten a head start. Controlling the police gave one enormous leverage. The official stance matters when building influence. Fish had already secured the police headquarters, and with that, she could expand her influence unimpeded. "Despicable," Ivy said sternly. "My dear," Fish replied with a sigh, "I'm just using the rules." "If a leader can't do this, they won't deserve the role," she added, glancing at Jerome and the others. They were surprised, but not angry. Only Ivy looked indignant. There was something about her that felt irredeemable. With the truce agreed, Fish didn't press her advantage during those days. Jerome and the others left the station and dispersed into the city. "You too, Jonathan," Jerome told Scarecrow as they walked out together. "You've got talent. Go and unleash it. Let this city learn to fear us. Ha 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 ha!" Thanks to Drunken Memories of Red Faces for the monthly ticket support. Jerome was clearly someone who loved watching chaos unfold. Lately, he chased it with a hunger that bordered on obsession. Scarecrow's fear toxin could tear a city apart. Jerome wanted to be where the flames were highest. After Jerome left the police station, Fish set her own plan in motion. Inspired by Li Ming, she decided a gang had to be built from the top down. She went to City Hall. Mad Hatter Tetch had the same idea, and the two met there. Because of the truce, neither could openly attack the other, so they staged a public struggle for control instead. Fish took a council member under her influence. Tetch took an executive. Fish moved on the deputy mayor. Tetch mirrored her choice. Each pull and counter move drew followers, prominent outsiders and political operatives, until two distinct, bustling entourages formed. They arrived at the mayor's office together, weapons and wills on display, while the mayor looked on in terror. Tetch bent words around the man, slipping him under the threat of hypnosis. Fish simply pressed a hand to his cheek and exercised a softer, more direct mental control. The mayor's face shifted like a puppet's. Minutes later, the city's news feeds erupted. The anchor's voice cut through the air. "Big news. The mayor has suddenly died of a heart attack." At New York's largest television station, a junior reporter burst into an executive meeting to deliver the breaking story. "Boss, we need to follow up quickly. Otherwise..." His words died when he pushed open the door. The meeting room was filled not only with his superiors, but with a dozen people in Joker makeup, each grinning and holding a gun. His bosses trembled under their weapons. "Hey, you! Come here!" The voice belonged to the Joker leader. The reporter looked up and recognized Jerome. "It seems City Hall's fallen," Jerome said casually. "Because of the truce, I can't finish off the city officials, but I have an idea." He asked if anything had happened at the court. "No, nothing," the terrified reporter stammered. Jerome flung an arm around the man's shoulders. "Good. You'll take us to the court, won't you?" With a dozen barrels aimed at him, the reporter had no choice. Jerome marched his new adherents to the New York court in a grand, televised procession. Live across the city, he staged a dramatic trial of a judge, turning the courtroom into a pulpit. Jerome spoke about corruption, judges who took bribes, miscarriages of justice, ruined families with nowhere to turn. His rhetoric found an audience. People who had felt powerless suddenly had someone to blame and somewhere to vent. Faces in the crowd lit up. Many joined him on the spot. "Long live Jerome," they cried, marching through the streets in Joker paint. The television reporter, pushed and brainwashed, led the parade and screamed the slogans. Jerome's gang was born. New York unraveled quickly. First the mayor, then the court. Reports went unanswered as police stations were overwhelmed. Open gang warfare followed. Small and medium-sized gangs rushed to take lost territory, but the police cracked down hard, and many disruptive leaders were arrested. Some suspected a trap. It seemed senseless. The Joker gang, visible and brazen, ran the streets while the police hesitated. Then a stranger thing happened. Those small and medium gangs which had been brought into the police station were released. Their members began acting in concert, as if they'd always been allies. They seized territory from the larger outfits, combining their strength until none of the old gangs could stand alone. That was when Fish stepped from the shadows and claimed credit. She revealed that the police station and those medium gangs answered to her. The Fish gang coalesced overnight. Tetch, who had taken half of City Hall, fared worse. 2 days of hard work had won him influence over some executive branches, but most of the small and medium gangs were already under Fish's sway. Trying to hypnotize them again would end with bodies like the mayor's. So Tetch, inspired by Fish's success, looked to the last force he could realistically control, the military. On the final day of the truce, he seized a nearby military base, slipping into the command center and hypnotizing the officers there. Ivy's ambitions, by contrast, suffered a different kind of setback. Given 5 days of truce while the others brawled, she'd expected to build power and influence. But she didn't know how to run a gang. She used plant-based hypnosis to gather a small cadre and tried to approach the big gang leaders to quietly erode them. The big leaders vanished. Some hid, others fled with their money, leaving Ivy scrambling. Worse, the visibility of her plant control drew enemies. Kidnappers and assassins came sniffing. To survive, she dug into Central Park, turning its vegetation into a living fortress, and waiting for the city to tear itself apart so she could pick at the scraps. Li Ming frowned. So, among this group, only Scarecrow still remembers the mission? It was true in practice. Wesley and the League of Assassins had been largely forgotten in the chaos Jerome and Fish stirred up. The immediate reward of recruiting followers seemed more important to most than the original objective. The oddly attired Scarecrow, Jonathan Crane, was the unexpected exception. He'd formed a small force but kept it quiet. He used fear toxin to carve out a pocket of the west side, controlling that slice of the city and largely ignoring the rest. Still, Crane watched. He'd seen the street battle between Cross and Fox and traced it back to his true target, Wesley. Having watched Cross's ferocity, he didn't rush in. He shadowed Wesley long enough to learn the League of Assassins' headquarters, and then he planted a massive cache of fear toxin there. As expected of someone from Gotham, Li Ming murmured. His Excellency, the King of Gotham, nodded in satisfaction. Chapter 205, The Victor of the Villain War. 3 days later, the gang war in New York erupted. The Fish gang struck first, assaulting the courthouse where the Joker gang had been based. With the police clearing the way, Fish's men swept in and took the building, but Jerome was nowhere to be found. Fish, commanding from a distance, immediately sensed something was wrong. She was about to order a retreat when, boom, 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 hidden explosives inside the courthouse detonated. The Fish gang took heavy losses, and the Joker gang had vanished without a trace. Fish's worst fear came true. The Joker gang had broken itself into cells. Their foundation had never been territory but ideology. Anyone who bought into Jerome's creed could be a member. Now the Joker gang was scattered across the city. Fish, despite her momentum, found herself with a fist and nowhere to strike. Worse, Jerome's ideas were contagious. As more people accepted them, the gang grew stronger even without a headquarters. Jerome was like a living pathogen, spreading a virus of chaos. In Gotham, Li Ming kept him in check. Here, in the mission world, no one restrained him. Fish began reasserting mind control over her followers every day, just to keep Jerome's influence from seeping in and threatening her hold. While Fish was constrained, the Mad Hatter moved in with his army. He used the NYPD's loss of control as a pretext to fill the vacuum and seize the streets. Fish had expected this and had been watching Tetch's moves closely. The Hatter's forces were strong, but Tetch avoided deploying large-scale weapons inside the city. Fish had also armed her men, so in equipment they weren't far apart. Though many of Fish's fighters lacked individual skill, their numbers let them trade blows with the Mad Hatter's troops. The world watched in stunned disbelief. Chaos in New York, this picturesque city, gripped global headlines. Just as nearby government forces prepared to intervene, the battle between Fish and the Mad Hatter came to an abrupt end. The victor was Jerome. Tetch had been too careless. While he fought Fish's gang, many of his own subordinates had already been swayed by Jerome. At the height of the fighting, the Mad Hatter's army commander defected, seizing control of everyone hypnotized by Tetch. Only then did the Hatter realize he had unwittingly paved the way for Jerome. With his army gone, Tetch's power collapsed, and he fled in panic. His escape was unusual. He broke the encirclement wearing a Mark II suit. Li Ming nodded to himself at the sight. Tetch was resourceful. He even supported his own manufacturing. Fish had planned to press the advantage at that moment, but Jerome proved more ruthless than Tetch. He deployed tanks into the urban area. Faced with an aggressor willing to field heavy armor, Jerome threatened surrounding cities with his large weapons, forcing the authorities to hesitate. No government wanted to risk a wider domestic catastrophe under the world's watchful eye. Fish was stunned by Jerome's audacity. The original agreement had been a turf war among gangs. Jerome had escalated it into something on another level. Fish considered conceding defeat until the Mad Hatter did something unexpected. The Hatter didn't disappear after fleeing. He went straight to the Scarecrow. In Crane's lab, Tetch bargained for help. "I'm part of the Joker gang. You shouldn't turn me away," he said while Crane prepared a new toxin. "You actually traded for alchemy and an alchemy table," Tetch muttered in surprise. They were allies but kept their affairs separate. Crane's exchange for alchemical equipment made sense given his expertise with chemical terror. Tetch added, "Jerome told you not to worry, right? The bigger the mess, the happier he is." Tetch knew Jerome had rescued the Scarecrow in the past, and Crane's loyalty to Jerome ran deep. Appealing to Jerome's name was the surest way to sway him. The Scarecrow agreed. He produced huge quantities of Alice gas for Jerome and mixed in his own fear gas. They released both into Jerome's ranks at the height of his apparent triumph, and immediate chaos followed. The city went dark with panic. Jerome only smiled. He stood atop a tank and broadcast incendiary messages to all of New York, stoking the blaze. Fish was overwhelmed. Many of her men were incapacitated by the gas, and she could no longer control them. Poison Ivy pulled back into Central Park and refused to emerge. Her plants trembled under artillery fire, unable to offer much aid. When the Scarecrow and Tetch led a gas mask contingent back into the fray, they met fierce resistance. Despite the madness induced by Alice gas and the terror sown by Crane's fear gas, the Joker gang hadn't collapsed. If anything, they had become more unified. Jerome's brainwashing proved remarkably stable. Unlike Fish's harsh, violent mind control, Jerome's method made people accept him genuinely. Even enraged and drug-fueled, his followers remained loyal, and the Alice gas amplified their combativeness. By the end, Fish's momentum had evaporated, and the Mad Hatter abandoned further resistance. The Scarecrow reveled in the chaos, watching his fear gas turn the city into a nightmare. Poison Ivy, belatedly, realized why Fish and Jerome had given her 2 extra days of truce. They'd wanted her to wait, to let others reach a certain strength before she stepped in. If Ivy had acted too soon, she might have steamrolled weaker allies, upsetting the balance. Now it was too late. Jerome had already won. Thus Jerome, formerly the first captain of the Reincarnation Squad, was successfully elected as the second captain. Chapter 206. The Correct Use of Influence Factor. Sloane, leader of the League of Assassins, had been swamped lately. His forgery of the Loom's directives had been exposed by Cross, and Cross had answered with betrayal and a purge that killed many of Sloane's people. Sloane's counter was cruelly clever. He tricked Cross's son Wesley into accepting special training aimed at killing Cross. Sloane knew Cross's weak spot, his love for his son, and counted on it to keep Cross from actually pulling the trigger. The plan worked. Wesley, driven by hatred and Fox's manipulation, accepted without suspicion. But outside, the situation in the city was erupting into chaos. "Boss, the people sent to Central Park failed," the lieutenant reported. "And the team sent to take Jerome?" Sloane demanded. Jerome was a walking headline, so exposed and flamboyant that assassination attempts had multiplied. As the head of an assassin organization, Sloane needed stability. Disorder damaged his operations. When the lieutenant hesitated, Sloane's worry deepened. "The squad we sent at Jerome turned on each other," the man said. "A few were flipped by Jerome and aimed at our people. Betrayal meant the League's information had been compromised." Sloane's face went hard. "Jerome didn't strike like a man who let assassins get away. Move everyone out. This place isn't safe," Sloane ordered. Start a transfer now. Elsewhere, Jerome listened intently to a defector describing the League's structure and abilities. Every world had its advantages, and spoils taken from other organizations could count toward mission evaluations. So the stronger the assassin bloodline, the more powerful the skill? Jerome asked. The defectors gave the same answer, Cross. Jerome immediately wanted to know how to find Cross, and he quickly learned Sloane's scheme and that Wesley, the boy in training, was Cross's son. Then Jerome grinned. Can you teach me the curved trajectory shot? The assassins shook their heads. The curved trajectory shot was a technique tied to top assassin bloodlines. Jerome had no such bloodline. Jerome laughed. Let me try. I feel lucky in this world. He wasn't giving up because of bravado alone. He was testing the faction effect he'd discovered. The stronger one's influence in a world, the larger the world bonuses. Jerome had been deliberately increasing his notoriety. He wanted to see how far those bonuses could push the rules. Back at the League's headquarters, Wesley was halfway through training when orders came to relocate him. Isolated from the outside and under Fox's manipulation, he complied. But as he walked toward his room, a strange smell reached him, and an image suddenly slammed into his mind. His fat female boss, a gun in her mouth, trying to kill him. He choked, "No!" and waved his hands in front of his eyes, desperate to scrub the vision away, but it only sharpened. The whole base was filled with Scarecrow's fear gas. Everyone saw the thing they dreaded most. Some fled, others tried to destroy it. Assassins, trained to eliminate threats, fired indiscriminately to steal themselves. Most of the bullets hit comrades. Jerome had not been careless on a whim. This escalation had crossed the government's red lines. If gang unrest was one thing, having elite forces and agents pushed into action was another, and many units were already converging on New York, just waiting for a chance to strike. Jerome had used Scarecrow's intelligence and tools to seize the League's headquarters, and he'd come to finish the job. Next time, he said to the 4 people behind him, we definitely can't use the army. It wasn't fun. Fish's eyes lit up. There would be a next time. The others agreed, especially Poison Ivy, who felt sidelined. Her killer plants were fearsome, but not against tank shells and heavy ordnance. The League of Assassins fell quickly to Jerome's team, but occupying the headquarters didn't equal completing the mission. Their objective was the League's destruction, not merely its capture. Sloane was taken prisoner. At the loom room, Sloane, terrified that the forged assassination list might be discovered, set fire to the loom itself, the sacred relic reduced to ash. True to his word, Jerome ordered Sloane to be put through the same special training Wesley had undergone. Fish and the others scoffed. How could Jerome acquire assassin abilities and the curved shooting without a proper bloodline? Jerome began a brutal self-training regimen anyway. He didn't cry out. He pushed himself until his body broke, then sank into a medicinal bath to sleep and heal, only to resume the punishment. Fish tried to stop him several times. Jerome brushed her off with one line that carried intent. The world focuses on me. Rimming watched quietly and couldn't help but admire the cunning. Jerome had grasped the faction mechanic instantly. The Reincarnation Squad's faction effect was simple. The more influence you claim in a world, the greater the world bonus you receive. World bonus was like a protagonist's halo, an amplification that lets a central character bend the impossible toward the possible. By making himself the most notorious terrorist in the League's world, by, in effect, seizing New York, Jerome had generated massive influence, enough to start bending rules tied to bloodlines. As Li-Ming predicted, 10 days were enough. Jerome managed to learn the curved trajectory shot that should have been exclusive to top assassin bloodlines. He also learned to speed up his heartbeat control to boost his physical performance, matching abilities Wesley had been trained to use. It looked unscientific, but in that world it was effective, very sci-fi, and very real. Thanks to everyone for reading. Thanks to FY Oro and the others for their monthly ticket support. Chapter 207, Minions Work, Boss Collects Money. Main Quest, League of Assassins Quest Requirements. Prevent Wesley from committing patricide and dismantle the League of Assassins. Quest Status, prevented Wesley from committing patricide, completed. Dismantled the League of Assassins, completed. Completion time, 16 days. Quest Evaluation, Li-Ming nodded. An A rank wasn't bad. The objective had been achieved, and that was what mattered. Jerome had learned curved shooting, wiped out the League of Assassins, and the team returned before the official purge. Still, Li Ming's expression flickered when he looked at the spoils the Jerome squad had handed over. Spoils obtained: Cross's corpse, Wesley's corpse, special medicinal bath formula. Of course, Jerome's solution to preventing Wesley from committing patricide was brutally logical: kill both Wesley and his father. If both were dead, patricide was impossible. Li Ming suspected that the reason the quest had not earned an S rank was that the world's protagonist had been killed by Jerome and his team. He didn't complain. More spoils only meant more profit. The Jerome squad had returned shortly after the killings. Cross and Wesley's bodies were still warm. Li Ming drew blood from both and fed samples into the analysis interface. He wanted curved shooting for himself. Jerome had learned it in the field. Li Ming could get it faster through analysis. The interface produced a small bloodline item. Assassin bloodline quality: normal, type, bloodline, effect, grants the ability curved shooting. The analysis only showed abilities Li Ming didn't already have. The assassin bloodline was overshadowed by the Spider-Man bloodline and only revealed the prerequisite for curved shooting, exactly what Li Ming needed. He consumed the bloodline and recalled Jerome's training process. Suddenly, he understood the technique. A pistol materialized in his right hand. He fired. Bang! The bullet curved in a visible arc. Li Ming had shooting level 10, so he picked up curved shooting far faster than Jerome and began with greater accuracy. The new skill initialized at level 7 for him. He copied the special medicinal bath formula as well. You could never have too many useful recipes. The feeling of having minions do the dirty work while he reaped the rewards was intoxicating. Pleased with the Jerome squad's performance, Li Ming opened the teleport gate to their settlement space, holding the Gotham scepter as he stepped through. A boss needed presents and trappings, after all. He noticed there were 7,000 points available to exchange. Not bad. Mad Hatter grinned at the sight. Scarecrow stayed silent, quietly adding a few alchemy formulas to the exchange list. Only this many points? We need more ways to get points, Jerome said, shaking his head. Li Ming's arrival changed the atmosphere. The squad fell into line and stood at attention. They weren't inexperienced rookies anymore. They had asked around in the reincarnation space and learned a few hard facts. For example, the pure white quest settlement space that no other reincarnator could enter, and that reincarnators couldn't recruit new members at will. Their respect for Li Ming had deepened. They didn't know his true identity, but they all understood he was exceptional. He'd just heard Jerome complaining about the lack of point channels and couldn't help but think they were right. The Jerome squad's only real source of points had been quests. Some reincarnators could hand in spoils for points, but Jerome's spoils had been absorbed by Li Ming and the Abyss to boost quest ratings instead of being converted into squad currency. Jerome and the others had accepted that as the rule, but Li Ming had bigger plans. Want more points? No problem, he said, catching their attention. From now on, if the spoils you get in a world are valuable enough, I'll give you extra points on top of improving the quest evaluation. He framed the squad's rightful share of points as a bonus reward, which perked everyone up and bought him goodwill. But he didn't stop at money. Another thing, Li Ming said, tone turning serious. Each of you is powerful on your own, but you fight like individuals. You've chosen a captain. Learn to operate as a team in the next world. If you go into faction conflicts disjointed, you'll be exploited by other squads. Don't blame me if that gets you killed. Jerome, Fish, and the others listened soberly. Li Ming continued, You can enter the Abyss space this time. One more thing, don't mention me to anyone. With that final admonition, he opened the teleport gate and left. If they failed to cooperate in the next quest and lost during factional conflict, it would be on them. He could always recruit others if needed. Back in the reincarnation space, Li Ming checked his income. 1.6 million points. He'd sold another 1,300 Mark II Iron Man armors. He'd underestimated demand. Mark II wasn't just attractive to low-level reincarnators. Mid-level players liked it too. A single-person vehicle that could fly faster than Mach 2 for only 1,200 points was essentially unbeatable. Sales kept climbing, so he put up another 2,000 sets for sale. Now he had 3.8 million points in hand, enough to exchange for another source power advancement. Thanks to Bookfriend 220409322151 for the monthly pass support. Chapter 208, Angel Organization, Exchange, Source Power Advancement Liveport 4, Price 5,600,000 points, Title Discount 2,800,000 points, Points Consumed 2,800,000. With 2.8 million points deducted, Li Ming immediately felt his strength surge. At his current energy intensity, he could take on Black Marvel from Universe 838 and win. He checked the cost for Source Power Advancement Liveport 5. 30 million points after the title discount. There was clearly a qualitative jump at Liveport 5, but 30 million was far beyond his reach for now. He scrolled to Source Power Application Liveport 4. With his Abyss Favored One title discount, it would cost 2.45 million points. He was still over a million short, but that was attainable if he saved up. Other reincarnators don't have what I have, a whole world to act as a processing factory, Li Ming muttered. High-level reincarnators don't get just tens of thousands of points per mission, do they? Abyss answered, Ding. Reincarnators above Tier 3 may select different mission types, such as joint exploration or invasion missions, which offer higher point rewards. That made sense. The mission worlds Li Ming usually drew were the most ordinary kinds. Their rewards were limited. Joint exploration meant multiple squads investigating a world together. That would be reserved for very high-level worlds and would pay better. Invasion missions were even more lucrative. Raiding and plundering were efficient shortcuts to wealth. So why don't I have those options if I'm already Tier 3? Li Ming asked. He understood the answer before Abyss replied. Abyss space was full of weak reincarnators. There simply weren't enough qualified people to form joint exploration teams. And Abyss itself was currently in such a precarious state that it wouldn't dare to open invasion missions casually. Every time Abyss sent out a mission, it emphasized survival first. Sure enough, Abyss warned, Ding. It is not recommended to enable other mission types at the current stage. Li Ming wasn't discouraged. He was on the right track, and his power was steadily rising. Whatever kind of mission he faced, strength mattered most. Still, he was curious about what kinds of missions mid- and high-level reincarnators typically undertook. Reincarnator organizations existed for a reason, like the Angel organization he'd heard about during the last faction confrontation, so there had to be demand for team-based, high-reward missions. Miles away, inside the Angel organization, several reincarnators sat around an oval conference table in a meeting room. Still no news from the mechanic? The man in the main seat asked. No, the bespectacled man replied. None of the mechanic's squad members have logged in on their friends list. At first, I thought it might be due to the time flow inside their mission world, but no matter how long a mission lasts, at most a year passes in reincarnation space. He adjusted his glasses. So the most likely possibility is they were wiped out during the faction confrontation. Bang! The leader's face darkened as he slammed his fist on the table. The mechanic is a Tier 4 reincarnator. He couldn't deal with a bunch of Tier 2 and Tier 3 rookies? He was entrusted with the space locator, such a valuable asset, and he failed? Don't get worked up, Neptune, the woman in red said calmly. This is reincarnation space. Anything can happen. Neptune, a reincarnator who had seen many battles, recovered his composure quickly. Time is one of the highest level laws. We finally have the chance to see its mysteries. We absolutely cannot miss that opportunity. Livingston, here. The man with glasses replied immediately. Have you cross-checked the reincarnator lists for any suspicious returns? Neptune already suspected the mechanic's mission had failed, but a faction confrontation usually had winners as well as losers, and he intended to find them. With the Angel organization's influence, if they discovered who'd won the mechanic's confrontation, they might coerce or entice that winner into revealing what they wanted. Livingston reported the details. I checked the reincarnator list. When the mechanics squad entered the mission world, there were 37 other Tier 2 and Tier 3 squads entering the confrontation. A total of 18 reincarnation squads returned, another voice began. Wait, a blond man at the table interrupted. Including the mechanics squad, there should have been 38 teams in total. That means 19 teams ought to have returned. Sometimes there are three-way confrontations, the woman in red said, unconcerned. That could explain discrepancies. That's the problem, Livingston continued. None of the returning teams encountered the mechanic or his squad. There are no traces of them ever having entered that world. Neptune's expression hardened. The mechanic had revealed the details of the Terminator world to obtain the Angel organization's support. Livingston's findings made everyone in the room sit up straighter. Our Reincarnator list is compiled jointly by the four major factions: Heaven, Heavenly Tao, Main God, and Central Continent, Livingston said. While there may be errors in data for very high-level reincarnators, the general data for lower-level reincarnators is very accurate. Faction confrontations are a critical data point and are basically error-free. There was also a squad from the Main God faction that reported the same absence, someone added. Neptune opened a light screen. It displayed the squads that had entered the mission world with the mechanic, squad sizes, basic member info, even strength classifications. Lists like these were available to the major factions for intelligence gathering. The Angel organization's compilation, gathered jointly by the four powers, was the most complete one in reincarnation space. Such data was accessible only to large organizations like theirs and was invaluable for recruitment and intel. Neptune's eyes narrowed. Hold on. He pointed something out to Livingston. The mechanics squad is rated C, while the Main God squad is rated C. That difference isn't significant enough to account for one annihilating the other. If they had clashed, we should have seen survivors, unless a third party was involved. Neptune pulled up a confidential roster and studied it. Livingston, ask Zheng Lao Gui whether these teams have returned. Livingston's face shifted. He nodded quickly in agreement and, leaning forward, initiated the inquiry. Abyss? Thanks to CXP and a salted fish that shouts 666 for your monthly votes. Salute. Chapter 209. First, rule out Zhang Wake inside the Abyss space. Zheng Lao Gui lingered near the teleportation platform. Many had mocked him for lingering on old hopes, wondering how there could still be new reincarnators arriving in the Abyss. Since Li Ming's visit last time, those taunts had grown quieter, though a few still sneered at his persistent watch. In truth, Zheng Lao Gui had long since given up on the Abyss itself. He stayed by the platform for two reasons. This area was less saturated by the Abyss's aura, and the platform sat far from others, convenient for pulling small schemes and selling information. Master Actuary, how can I help you? He answered quietly when a call came through, his eyes flicking around to make sure no one else was nearby. Only after confirming he was alone did he listen closely. On the line was Livingston of the Heaven faction. Livingston got straight to the point. The three who went to the faction war from the Abyss last time? Zheng Lao Gui forced a pleasant smile. I was just about to tell you, heh. Livingston cut him off. 2,000 points. As soon as the words were spoken, Zheng Lao Gui received a notification. 2,000 points credited. He bowed his head, pleased. Thank you, Master Actuary, he said, then began to speak properly. None of those three returned. Dead? Nah. Livingston's voice tightened. According to his intelligence, no one should have encountered the Abyss during that faction war. Dead. Zheng Lao Gui did not hesitate. Livingston pressed for more. Has anything changed in the Abyss recently? Yes, Zheng Lao Gui replied after a pause. What? Zheng Lao Gui hesitated, then added 3,000. Another notification popped up. 3,000 points credited. Livingston's intuition prickled. Something felt off. Long stretches had passed without a new reincarnator appearing in the Abyss. A new reincarnator arrived, Zheng Lao Gui continued decisively. Name, Zhang Weike. Male, about 20. He wears a black mask so I can't tell his face. His strength isn't high. And he's already dead. He died in the third mission world. How do you know? Livingston asked. Zheng Lao Gui chuckled softly. I'd hoped that kid would survive the third mission so that my entry into the faction war might be delayed. I arranged with Anya to borrow the Dark Crow Orb, but the kid never showed up. The mark on the Dark Crow Orb was erased. If he'd come back alive to the reincarnation space, Anya would have detected it. Even in the end, the Dark Crow Orb couldn't be recalled. Keep an eye out. If any other new reincarnators appear in the abyss, tell me immediately." Livingston finished and hung up. Zheng Laogui watched the call end and checked the totals with a self-satisfied grin. 5,000 points from a single tip. He pocketed the gain happily. Selling Abyss intelligence had its perks. Livingston told the gathered members of the Heaven faction everything Zheng Laogui had reported. The news surprised them. "If that new reincarnator is dead, he can't interfere with our plans," someone observed. "But none of their team returned either," Neptune said, frowning deeply. "This is strange." The red-clothed woman guessed aloud. Could their time machine have been discovered by another organization, and they hid it? At most, they'd hide their spoils, Neptune countered. They couldn't conceal an entire squad in plain sight, unless that squad wasn't on the list. To pull that off would require a large organization, Livingston added. Everyone's minds turned to their most dangerous enemy, the Demon Organization. The Heaven and Hell factions had been at each other's throats for ages. As the largest reincarnator organization in the Heaven faction, the Angels were natural enemies of the Demon Organization, which led the Hell faction. "The time machine is known to only a handful within Heaven," the red-clothed woman murmured. "It's hard to imagine it leaking, unless the mechanic himself let it slip." Neptune's expression hardened. "For now, put this aside. Livingston, quietly look for any information about Terminators and liquid robots. I refuse to believe the people who got the mechanic's spoils would hesitate to use them." "Understood," Livingston replied. "Right now our priority is the technology," Neptune continued, shifting the topic. "Is Philip ready?" Philip, the blonde man, grinned. "Of course. I already arranged with that reincarnator team from Zhangzhou. They'll use a space locator to get into the world, and then I'll bring people in with a world tracking scroll to join them. Even if we can only enter through the faction war," he added, "everyone I'm sending is Tier 4. Those Tier 3 reincarnators won't stand a chance." "How did you convince them?" the red-clothed woman asked. 20,000 points, Philip said lightly, "or I'd have hunted them down for 2 worlds." The team had agreed quickly. "After the item is secured, give them 30,000, Neptune said. "We can't sully Heaven's reputation. The higher-ups will hold us accountable." Hearing higher-ups, Philip became a little more serious. "All right." At the same time, Li Ming, unaware he was being watched, was browsing the exchange center. He paused over the time-related items. Quality, quality. Type, special item. Effect, freezes time for 60 seconds. The user can move freely. Exchange price, 200,000 point discounted. Quality, epic. Type, special equipment. Effect, spirit plus 80, casting speed plus 15%. Equipment skill, stasis, freezes your own time for 25 seconds, making you immune to interference. Cooldown, 120 hours. Exchange price, 750,000 points, discounted. "Are all time items this expensive?" Li Ming muttered. He planned to travel back to 1918 Gotham and didn't want to disturb its timeline, so he was looking for anything that might help. Space and time equipment were costly, time-related gear even more so he decided not to splurge on the expensive hourglass. But he still bought the one-time time hourglass for 200,000 points. It could save his life if he ran into an enemy overwhelmingly stronger than him and needed a critical few seconds to react. After recent purchases, Li Ming still had over 1,000,000 points left, so the hourglass didn't leave him short. He watched for a moment as lower-level reincarnators treated items like the Iron Man armor as disposable mission gear, buying a set, scrapping it after a mission, and buying a new one. The points gained in mission worlds often outpaced the cost, so many saw it as profitable. Li Ming observed this trend with quiet amusement. He thought ahead, smiling inwardly. Once most people had bought the Mark II armor and the playing field leveled out, he'd put Mark III on the shelves. Performance-wise, Mark III would decisively outclass Mark II. When that happened, the scramble for Mark II would begin again. He'd price Mark III a little higher, making sure low-level reincarnators had fewer spare points to spend elsewhere. After all, without competition among them, how would he harvest points? Li Ming closed his eyes for a moment and let himself chuckle. Let them laugh now. It wouldn't last. Chapter 210. Long time no see. Wonder Woman. Abyss, Are you sure you can handle this and that it absolutely won't affect Gotham's timeline? Li Ming had originally wanted to integrate the space shuttle ability into the portal, but Abyss suggested he first meet the conditions for time travel and then reinforce everything at once. So Li Ming decided not to wait and go straight to Gotham in 1918. Before leaving, he double-checked with Abyss. His arrangements in Gotham were excellent and would be important for obtaining other superheroes' bloodlines later. If he wasn't absolutely confident, he wouldn't risk traveling through time. What if he came back only to find the timeline unchanged, like Barry Allen in the Flash movie? Ding. As long as you act within the restricted conditions, Abyss can guarantee the timeline will remain unchanged, came the prompt. What are the conditions? Li Ming asked. Ding. You will only know upon arriving at the target timespace. Before Li Ming could press further, Abyss added, Ding. This time travel will be considered the completion of a mission world. Li Ming frowned. Other reincarnators might rejoice at shaving off a mission world, but he wanted as many mission worlds as possible. If this counted as one, next time he'd be dragged into a faction confrontation. He took a breath and calmed down. The mechanic who showed up in the last faction confrontation had been an accident. He was now a Tier 3 reincarnator. His opponents in the next confrontation would be Tier 3 too. What was there to fear? Could a Tier 4 even appear? Even if one did, as long as they didn't show up in a group, he could handle them. Level didn't map perfectly to strength, but higher-level reincarnators certainly could cause bigger problems. Li Ming didn't wait any longer. This time, he exchanged for source power advancement, which didn't require the same familiarization as source power application. He entered the Gotham world and opened a time portal to 1918. Source power advancement LA4 was far stronger than LAV2. In the Resident Evil world, he'd opened a portal spanning 10 years and nearly exhausted his source power. Now he opened a portal spanning 72 years and used less than half. He looked at the swirling gateway, then stepped through. After the brief dizziness, Li Ming arrived in 1918. Current world number 119. Main quest activated. Time passerby quest requirements. Do not use technology from outside the current time period and avoid actions that would affect the future timeline. Kill Ares. Time limit 360 days. Quest reward 1 limited rule fusion enhancement. This world was special. The quest reward was shown in advance for the first time. The restriction on using out-of-time technology meant no Iron Man armor, Iron Legion, Terminator Legion, Robot Legion, or Bio Legion. He still had his bloodline and source power, so it wasn't crippling, just less convenient. Li Ming removed his Sunday invisible glasses and his suit reverted to ordinary fabric. The quest required killing Ares. He knew Ares' secret identity on Earth was Sir Patrick Morgan of London, but killing Ares required divine power from Zeus. Li Ming had no divine power. Source power could be converted into other energies, but he had never seen true divine power and couldn't mimic it. So he had to find Zeus's daughter, Wonder Woman, Diana, a demigod who carried divine power capable of killing Ares. The immediate task was to find Paradise Island. The island was shielded by a barrier Zeus had cast before his death and couldn't be detected from the outside. But Li Ming, familiar with the plot, had a method. In Wonder Woman's story, a pursued spy, Steve Trevor, accidentally brought the German army to Paradise Island. If Li Ming could find Steve, he could find the island. He drew a circle in the air and opened a spark portal. Visualizing Steve's face, he used his probability manipulation. This portal will lead me to Steve, he silently commanded, then peered in. The portal opened high in the sky, just as a German plane flew by. Li Ming had good eyesight and recognized the pilot, Captain Kirk. The witch's ability is so easy to use, he thought with a small smile. He flicked a source power rope from his hand and lassoed it onto the German plane. A force pulled him into the portal. Steve felt a jolt, but seeing only thick smoke where the plane had been hit, found nothing else and thought little of it. Planes in 1918 already reached 180 to 220 kilometers per hour, faster than Li Ming could fly using normal source power, so he hitched a ride. It was only travel. He didn't need to use 2x supersonic speed, which consumed too much energy. The plane couldn't fly much longer. Below, German warships pursued, waiting for it to crash. Li Ming noticed a thick fog ahead and realized Paradise Island was near. He clenched his hand and called down a few huge bolts of lightning that set a veil over the sky, hiding the plane from those below. Then he opened a portal in front of the plane, released the rope, and carefully unbuckled Steve's stuck seatbelt. Steve was stunned by the fog and lightning. The next second, he found himself on a shore. He turned and saw the pursuing German ships had vanished. Though he didn't understand what had happened, he made an emergency landing on the water and swam to shore. "Where is this?" he asked a passing local. "Britain," came the reply. Among all the supporting characters in superhero stories, Steve was a good man, so Li Ming helped him, preventing a scripted death. Li Ming hovered in the concealment of the fog and watched as the warship penetrated the protective shield and entered Paradise Island. He followed it inside. On a cliff above the shoreline, Diana, having just awakened some of her divine power and nearly injuring her mentor Antiope in a sparring match, had come down to the sea to clear her head. She couldn't make sense of the power stirring within her. Then she saw several unfamiliar ships appearing on the distant coast and immediately went on alert. "Your mother is coming with the warriors. Keep them away, otherwise there might be heavy casualties," a voice suddenly said in her ear. Diana spun around and saw someone she didn't recognize. "A man?" she blurted, surprised. Although Li Ming knew Diana had grown up on Paradise Island and only learned about men from books, he still felt a little awkward. "What? Do I not look like one?" he replied, staring at Diana's exquisite face. He recalled the wonderful time they'd shared in Gotham and couldn't help smiling to himself. "Long time no see, Diana." Thanks to Bookfriend 22-207-25-19112298, Bookfriend 2022-1027-14293371 Ainio, Liulian Yair Fushui, and Shuyang for the monthly ticket support from these 5 great benefactors. Thanks to Baishao Ainio for the reward support. Chapter 211, I'm really not Zeus's illegitimate son. "Diana, stay away from that man." Queen Hippolyta's voice cut through the air as she sensed an intruder against the island's protective barrier. She quickly led her riders forward. When she saw Li Ming standing beside Diana, a cold premonition tightened in her chest and she called out at once. Diana, however, only looked at Li Ming and felt nothing but calm. She detected no malice in him. Hippolyta's warriors closed ranks around Li Ming, javelins leveled at his chest. "Outsider, who are you?" "Li Ming, you can call me Li," he said with a smile. "Just an ordinary human." Diana studied him with curiosity. There was no denying that Li Ming's handsome face helped his cause. She formed a favorable first impression immediately. Having grown up on myths and legends in which gods aided mortals, Diana had always viewed humanity as kind and worthy of protection. Li Ming was the first human she had ever met in person, so that warm sympathy extended to him as well. Hippolyta was not so easily swayed. She knew how complex humans could be, capable of great kindness and terrible cruelty. "Did you lead them here?" she demanded. Li Ming shook his head. "No, I bear them no ill will." He glanced toward the shore where small boats were closing in. "They came by accident, but they are enemies." The German soldiers had stumbled upon the island while searching the sea. Through binoculars, they had seen nothing but women and, predictably, wanted to investigate further. Hippolyta's face turned grim. She gave the order to attack. Amazon archers lined the cliffs and loosed flaming arrows. Boats were set ablaze. Many soldiers fell. Hippolyta and Antiope readied their cavalry to charge to the beach and fight the invaders up close. "Mother, be careful. Don't rush in," Diana called, remembering Li's warning. "We don't know what weapons they have." "Amazon warriors do not fear sacrifice," Hippolyta replied, and rode out without looking back. Li Ming winced inwardly at their old-fashioned valor. Even the most skilled warrior could not withstand a modern rifle. The Amazons fought with cold weapons and arrows against automatic fire. Despite their skill and courage, they bled. Bullets found flesh. Antiope, Diana's mentor, fell under gunfire. When the carnage threatened to become a massacre, Li Ming acted. He rose into the air. The day, which had been clear moments before, dimmed as dark clouds gathered overhead. The scepter in his hand, its metal gleaming with electric charge, began to tremble. Thunder rolled, both sides froze and turned to him. Lightning danced along the shaft of the scepter, answering the storm above. With everyone's attention focused on him, Li Ming pointed the scepter at the German landing craft. The thunder obeyed. Bolts ripped down from the clouds and streaked along the coastline, bypassing the Amazon lines and striking the invaders. Men screamed as lightning struck, boats were shattered, and one distant warship disintegrated into flaming wreckage. The Amazons watched in stunned silence. Many of those who had been ready to thrust a spear into the stranger now felt their hostility evaporate. On Paradise Island, thunder had a special significance. Zeus, king of the gods and the island's creator, was bound to storms. He had fashioned the barrier that had protected the Amazons for millennia. To see lightning answer a mortal's command was to raise the impossible question: was this man connected to Zeus? Li Ming landed on the shore. Hippolyta, Diana, and others converged around him. Li. Hippolyta faltered, then adopted a more formal tone. Who are you exactly? I told you, human, Li Ming said. A human who happens to know a great deal. Hippolyta did not look convinced. What is your relationship with Zeus, king of the gods? Li Ming forced a small, rueful smile. He had already suspected they'd jump to that conclusion. There's a bit of a connection, but nothing to do with blood. He thought about joking that son-in-law might count, but he pushed the quip aside. If he didn't disavow the simplest explanation, these women would latch on to the idea that he was Zeus's illegitimate son. How else could a mortal command lightning? He had no interest in being treated as someone else's progeny. The Amazon queen still searched his face, unconvinced. Li Ming moved on to what mattered. That's not important right now. You're in grave danger. All eyes turned to him. Ares has reappeared, Li Ming announced. Ares, the god of war? The name hit them like a physical blow. Zeus had created the barrier in part to shield the Amazons from Ares. His appearance would be catastrophic. How do we know this is true? Ares has not been seen for a long time, Hippolyta said, exchanging a worried look with Antiope. Only they knew Diana's true identity, daughter of Zeus, sister of Ares, a demigod. They alone knew that the god-killer sword displayed on the island was a fake. The real god-killer was not a blade enshrined in stone, but Diana herself, who wielded divine power. Beyond the barrier, a war has engulfed the human world, Li Ming said. Over 1 billion people are affected, and tens of millions have died. Ares is involved. Hearing the scale of the conflict, the Amazons accepted the likelihood of his involvement. The god of war grew stronger with every battle. To prove his words, Li Ming extended a strand of source power, a faint, shimmering rope, and looped it around a man lying prone on the beach. The soldier had been playing dead. Li Ming had spared him on purpose. With a tug, he hauled the man up. You can question him yourselves, Li Ming said. Use the lasso of truth. Hippolyta stared at Li Ming in astonishment. He knew about their lasso of truth. He knew the island and its customs. For a moment, she hesitated between suspicion and gratitude, weighing the stranger who had just killed so many of their attackers with thunder and then offered them an enemy to question. Diana only watched silently, the weight of destiny heavy in her eyes. Outside Paradise Island, war had come again, and with it, the shadow of Ares. Chapter 212, The True God's Slaying Weapon. Mother, ask quickly. Diana's voice trembled. Hearing Li Ming say that tens of millions had died in the war had thrown her into a panic. Hippolyta led Li Ming and the captured soldiers of the German army to where the lasso of truth was kept. The golden rope was blessed with divine power. Anyone bound by it would be compelled to speak only the truth. Hippolyta tightened the lasso around the prisoners and one by one questioned them. Their answers confirmed Li Ming's report. A terrible war raged across the human world. Righteous fury lit Diana's face. The people she knew could not be like this. This bloodshed must be the work of Ares, inciting humans to kill one another. She wanted to drag the god of war out by the hair and stop him. At that moment, Wonder Woman was still essentially a several thousand-year-old girl, naive about the wider world. Are you done asking? Li Ming asked softly when Hippolyta finally nodded. With a small gesture, he sealed the German prisoners away in the mirror dimension. The Amazons looked at him in puzzlement, but Li Ming explained with calm, for your safety. If they go free, it would be too easy for Paradise Island's location to be exposed. That was enough. The Amazons were warriors. When safety was at stake, they accepted decisive action. Mother, we must go stop Ares. If we defeat him, we can save those humans he's leading astray, Diana insisted. Hippolyta's face hardened. She had always believed that saving humanity at large was beyond the Amazons' responsibility. Their duty was to their island and their people. Intervening in human wars wouldn't solve the root problem. Li Ming stepped forward. If Ares is left unchecked outside, given his influence in the human world, it's only a matter of time before Paradise Island is discovered. He had said it on purpose. Ares could recruit humans and use them to betray the island, but it was unlikely he would immediately locate Paradise Island. Li Ming knew that if the situation were framed as merely a human war, Hippolyta would not lift a finger. By invoking Ares' threat, he left her no choice. Hippolyta could not remain indifferent. As queen, her prime obligation was to protect Paradise Island. If Ares sought the island, or if he weakened the Guardians, the things they guarded would be threatened. One of those things was the Mother Box, a powerful, ancient artifact of cosmic energy. Zeus had valued Paradise Island in part because the Amazons guarded the Mother Box. Even if Li Ming had ulterior motives, the idea of Ares finding the island forced Hippolyta to act. Seeing her sudden vigilance, Li Ming waved his hands. "Don't worry, I'm not after the Mother Box, nor am I your enemy. If I wanted it, you wouldn't be able to stop me." Hippolyta was taken aback. She remembered the lightning that had filled the coast earlier and felt a chill. Li Ming's claim made sense in a way that left her speechless. "I came for Diana," he said plainly, "because only she can kill Ares." "No!" Hippolyta's cry was instant. Diana, however, met the declaration with eager confidence. "Mother, I can do it. I can use the god-slaying sword." "No," Hippolyta interrupted, looking at her daughter with an ache that was both motherly and royal. "Not yet." Turning to Li Ming, she asked, hope and desperation mingling in her tone, "You're so strong. Can't you kill Ares?" "Only Zeus's divine power can kill Ares." Li Ming's answer was quiet and final. Hippolyta closed her eyes. The admission swallowed the last of her hope. "You haven't told her?" Li Ming said, feigning surprise. "Told me what?" Diana's brow furrowed. Hippolyta's face crumpled. The queen, who had been stern and majestic in the assembly, now seemed only a mother weighing a heartbreaking truth. She had kept a secret to protect her daughter, the truth of Diana's birth. Diana was more than an Amazon. She was the daughter of Zeus, born with divine blood and a latent power that marked her as a weapon forged for gods. Zeus had anticipated Ares and prepared a means to stop him. Diana herself, the god-slaying instrument hidden in human form. Diana stood stunned. The air knocked from her for a long beat. The strangeness she had always felt about herself fell into place. This explained so much. But terror did not take root. Years of training with Antiope and the hardy life on Paradise Island had given her courage and a steadiness of spirit. "Mother," she said softly, reaching out and smoothing her mother's furrowed brow. Her smile was warm and sure. "I understand why you kept this from me. I love you, but believe me, I can do this." Hippolyta let out a breath, relieved yet filled with new, sharper fear. "Diana, you haven't learned to control your divine power. You can't use it reliably yet. Ares may be weakened, but he's experienced. He fought the gods and survived. He won't be easy to defeat." Li Ming listened and sighed. He understood the danger. Even a wounded Ares was lethal, and Diana's divine ability was raw. He walked a slow circle in the sand, thinking, then spoke. "Perhaps I can help. I can teach Diana to use her divine power." A new light kindled in Hippolyta's eyes. Li Ming was powerful in his own right. Even without divine energy, he understood forces and techniques that might accelerate Diana's learning. If anyone could speed her mastery, it was him. She pulled Diana close and urged her to accept. Diana had no reservations. If anything, Li Ming already held her trust. He had helped Paradise Island, and her instinctive warmth toward humanity made her inclined to work with him. "Call me Master," Li Ming said with a teasing smile, recalling how Diana had once tried to make him call her Master when they first met. "Master." Diana's voice was bright and melodious, and in it there was determination, the clear, ringing promise of a hero ready to be forged. Chapter 213. I'm entrusting my daughter to you. "Diana, what did I tell you? You need to infuse emotion. Power infused with emotion is stronger." On the beach of Paradise Island, Diana crossed her wrists and released a burst of divine energy from her bracelets of submission. Li Ming shook his head, dissatisfied. "This is a bit rough," Diana admitted, but it wasn't a complaint. She closed her eyes and concentrated, carefully recalling Li Ming's instructions. Diana always worked harder at what she found difficult. "For a beginner, you're doing very well," Li Ming said with a smile. Diana didn't answer, but the corner of her mouth lifted slightly. He was right. Infusing emotion into energy was a source power application 11.2 technique. For Diana to pick up even a hint of it in so short a time was impressive. 3 days had passed since she became his disciple. Li Ming had promised to be a patient teacher, and he had kept his word. With Source Power Application Port 3 and the Supreme Strange's magic notes in hand, he was well qualified, by Kamartaj standards, to be a supreme sorcerer. Guiding Diana was well within his abilities. Besides, Diana would be his in the future. The stronger she became, the better for him. Time was limited, though, so Li Ming focused on teaching the specific method he had once used to defeat the Abyss Reincarnator Jielan, how to infuse divine power with emotion. In the original timeline, Diana's final surge came from that exact technique. Disappointment in humanity's cruelty, grief over Steve's sacrifice, and relief at seeing humanity's good side all coalesced into a power so potent she defeated Ares with the force of love. That had been a protagonist's power burst. Li Ming wanted Diana to learn to use the method proactively. Progress was promising. Diana picked up control quickly and could release divine power on her own. Mastering the emotional infusion would take more time. While teaching, Li Ming also examined Diana's divine energy, an energy unlike anything he had experienced. Its intensity was at least on par with Source Power Advancement 11.4, and its nature was distinct from the magic and dimensional forces he knew. Divine power didn't have a single fixed effect. It adapted to the user's intent, displaying different characteristics to meet different needs. It was a miraculous force that granted wishes in a way, somewhat akin to chaos magic. Li Ming studied it with the seriousness of a scholar. Though his source power was highly compatible, he couldn't simply convert energy he didn't understand, so he had to learn. 2 days later, Diana unleashed a divine attack far beyond her previous capabilities. The sheer force startled even her. "How does it feel?" Li Ming asked. "It felt like pressure released all at once. I feel very light," she replied. "Remember that feeling," he told her. "You'll use it later." They prepared to leave. The German emperor was set to sign the armistice, and Ares was at a rare low point. But in the original story, General Ludendorff refused to accept defeat. He had the virologist Dr. Maru develop a new poison gas meant to reignite the war. If Ludendorff's plan worked, Ares would regain strength, and Diana's chance to beat him would shrink drastically. Diana was eager. She couldn't wait to go out, confront Ares, free humanity from his deception, and restore peace. Seeing her like that, Li Ming realized how much work remained. He didn't want Diana to end up like in the original plot, discovering only at the end that war was humanity's choice and that humans were not the idealized beings she imagined, only then disillusioned, withdrawing from the human world for the next 100 years. His chief task was to help her accept reality without losing her compassion. Hippolyta had been watching Diana's progress closely. When she learned they were about to leave, she personally presented the divine artifacts the island had prepared for her daughter. There was the God-Killer's sword, razor sharp, though in the original timeline, Ares later crushed it with his bare hands. There was a divine shield with properties similar to Diana's bracelets of submission, automatically drawing away incoming fire and defending against arrows, stray bullets, and other close-range attacks. The lasso of truth, Wonder Woman's iconic weapon and a true divine artifact, could compel the bound to speak truth, and in Diana's hands it had many inventive uses, like snagging clouds so she could swing through the air. There was also the customary battle outfit, more ornamental than protective, as Li Ming privately observed, but undeniably beautiful on her. He asked for, and Hippolyta agreed to provide, an additional full-body battle armor as a backup for when they left the island. Diana's bracelets of submission were unlike those of the other Amazons. Forged from fragments of Zeus's shield, the Aegis, they contained divine power. Indestructible and capable of automatically diverting attacks, they also let Diana regulate the divine energy inside her. With these artifacts, she was armed for both offense and defense. Li Ming couldn't help but feel a twinge of envy. He didn't dwell on it. Equipment was useful, but not everything. His priority was his own cultivation. Source power encompassed everything, and other systems could be tools to enhance it. Before their departure, Antiope and the Amazon warriors came to bid Diana farewell. As heir to the throne, she had been watched over by them since childhood. Their affection was natural. This time, her leaving was not an escape, but a warrior going to battle, with the freedom to return after the fight. The goodbyes were warm rather than sorrowful. Hippolyta pulled Li Ming aside and pressed him to take good care of Diana. Over the past few days, Diana's attachment to Li Ming had grown, and Hippolyta had noticed. He often held her daughter's hand, after all. She suspected ulterior motives. Li Ming smiled wryly. He knew Hippolyta wouldn't believe he was merely Diana's teacher. Chapter 214, A Fluttering Heart. They left at night. After crossing Paradise Island's protective barrier, Li Ming could have opened a portal and ended the journey instantly, but for some unexplained reason, he didn't. "It's time to sleep," Diana said, patting the spot next to her. She fluffed a few cushions and made a small bed. The hem of her robe showed a glimpse of her legs, and seeing that stirred an odd flutter in Li Ming's chest. "You know men and women aren't supposed to just sleep together, right?" he said. "Because we're not married?" Diana offered. "That's part of it." Li Ming hesitated, and a line from a movie popped into his head. Two people cherishing each other until death. But mostly it's about love. Love until death? Diana put a hand to her face and smiled a little dreamily. Who wouldn't want that? "What is love anyway?" she asked suddenly. Li Ming blinked. The question caught him off guard, and he answered the first thing that came to mind. "Maybe it's when two people support and care for each other, feel happy together, and miss each other when they're apart." "Oh." Diana was quiet for a moment, then, before Li Ming could react, she said, "I feel that way about you. I think I've fallen in love with you." Li Ming stared. Her eyes curved into a smile, bright and more captivating than the moon above them. Diana was the first man had she ever truly met. Well, the first woman to fall for a man in her life on Paradise Island was Steve in the old stories. But this world had been different. Li Ming's reckless courage on the beach, his intervention against the Germans, the bravery he showed facing Ares, the way he'd guided her these past days, all of it had touched her. Love was a strange flutter you couldn't read in books, and now Diana had it for him. He couldn't help but grin. "All right," he said. "I admit I feel the same way." He lay down beside her without another thought. "So, are we going to do it?" Diana asked, blunt and uninhibited. "Do what?" Li Ming asked, surprised by her directness. "The books say that when men and women are in love, they seek physical pleasure," she said matter-of-factly. "I've read all the books on the island." Li Ming swallowed, a little embarrassed but not inclined to rush. He wasn't the sort to be reckless for the sake of lust. He wanted something real, and he believed he could have Diana in time. "We don't need to move that fast," he said. "We can start with a hug." Diana smiled and snuggled into his arms, closing her eyes. Seeing her face so close made Li Ming realize she'd been teasing him. He laughed softly and wrapped his arms around her. Romance had never been his strong suit, but having someone who cared felt nice. When they woke, they were already on the shore. "We were lucky. Someone gave us a ride," Li Ming said lightly, though in truth he'd used a portal. He let the lie stand. He enjoyed keeping her a little in the dark. "I slept that soundly?" Diana frowned, chiding herself for losing a warrior's vigilance. "Where are we going?" "To the front lines." Li Ming didn't steer her toward London, where Ares lurked, but to the battlefield where Ludendorff commanded his forces. If anything happened to Ludendorff, Ares would likely show himself. Ares had an interest in the poison gas being prepared there. The base lay beyond 2 or 3 contested fields, so they first stopped in a small town behind the lines. Diana's robe hid the ancient Greek-style armor she'd been wearing, armor that would look out of place in public. Li Ming decided to buy her some clothes. Walking the town, Diana drew attention. Even in simple garments, she was the most beautiful woman many people had ever seen. Men who had thought of flirting seemed to shrink back when they saw Li Ming beside her. Something about a capable man and a striking companion made them back down. "Little baby," Diana cried, spotting a mother with an infant by the roadside. Paradise Island had almost no men and few children. The sight of a real human infant made Diana light up. Her enthusiasm startled the mother. Had Diana not been so lovely, the woman might have panicked. Hesitant at first, the mother only allowed Diana to hold the baby after Li Ming subtly showed a small gold bar. The infant slept peacefully in Diana's arms. She was gentle, listening to the mother's instructions on how to hold the child. "Where's the father?" Diana asked softly, patting the baby. The mother's face went hard. "He died on the battlefield." Diana's smile vanished. "Any other family. Only my mother's left. The rest are gone." The woman's voice was calm but brittle. She sounded like someone who had learned how to carry their losses. Diana's heart ached at all the private tragedies the war had carved into people's lives. She turned to the mother and said with a conviction that surprised even Li Ming, "It will be over soon. Once I defeat Ares, people can stop being influenced and will be able to live in peace." The mother blinked, taken aback, and looked to Li Ming as if searching for confirmation. He merely smiled politely. Whatever the mother understood from their words, her attitude toward Diana warmed. She seemed reassured. "How will you two live?" the mother asked after a pause. Diana looked at the infant and then back at the woman. "I'll do what I can to make the world safe again," Diana said simply. They said their goodbyes, and as they walked on, Li Ming led Diana through the town and beyond, letting her see as much of humanity as possible. There were doctors tending the wounded and soldiers exhausted from fighting, people who fit Diana's image of nobility and sacrifice. But there were also those who profited from the war, who bullied neighbors or sold goods at exorbitant prices. Diana frowned as she watched. The war itself might be Ares' doing, but human cruelty and greed didn't always fit his style. Some things were darker and more complicated than a single god's influence. Chapter 215, the true god of war. Gunfire and explosions echoed around them as they cut through the combat zone. Diana reached for her sword reflexively, ready to dive into the fighting, but Li Ming caught her arm. "War is a quagmire," he said quietly. "If we want to save more people, we have to deal with the root cause." Diana nodded, though she misunderstood what he meant. To her, the root cause meant Ares himself. Li Ming meant something else, stopping whoever was making the war continue. The battlefield blocked their only path, so Li Ming motioned for her to use the method he had shown her. Diana sighed, drew out the lasso of truth, swung it once, then flung it into the clouds. The lasso lengthened and wrapped itself around a white bank of cloud. "Which way?" she asked. Li Ming produced a single bullet. "I'll throw this," he said. "When it lands, the direction the bullet's point faces is our destination." "That's more unreliable than using your lasso to catch clouds," Diana scoffed. Li Ming shrugged. "Who says it isn't?" Then quietly, "Besides, I can bend probabilities. With source power, pointing us the right way is easy." The bullet skittered across the ground and came to rest, and its muzzle pointed toward a distant cluster of lights. Diana prepared to fly, but Li Ming glanced at her and tapped her on the head, a small smile on his lips. "Don't fly me," he said. "Call me master." Diana balked for a moment at the odd title, then allowed herself to be guided. Li Ming slipped his arm around her waist. "I can't stay airborne long," he explained. "I'll need you to carry me." They took off, swinging through the night like a pair of improbable acrobats. The improvised travel was fast. Before long, they were above the German Army High Command near Hazebrock, France. The camp matched Diana's mental picture of a place where a war god might influence men. Well-armed soldiers, rows of gear, planes on the tarmac. "Is Ares in there?" Diana asked, scanning. Li Ming was candid. "I know Ares exists, but I haven't seen him here. We didn't come for Ares." "For Ludendorff?" Diana guessed. Li Ming nodded. "He's the one pushing the war forward. If his plan succeeds, the armistice will fall apart. He's been developing a particularly potent gas. They're loading canisters onto a bomber right now." Diana's face hardened. "Then we stopped the bombs." They slipped into the camp under the cover of dusk. In the dim light, they watched crews load canisters into a bomber, canisters marked as Dr. Maru gas, and then saw Ludendorff moving inside the control tower, barking orders. Li Ming pointed. "That's him." Diana's grip tightened on the god-killer's sword. "Killing Ares would stop the soldiers," she said. Li Ming followed her up the stairs to the tower. "Not if the men have already been convinced to fight for other reasons," he replied. We deal with the immediate threat first. Diana had changed into full combat armor. She moved like an unstoppable force, shield and sword working together, the shield taking incoming fire, while she closed the distance and cut down those who stood between her and the control room. They burst through the door at the top of the tower. Ludendorff looked up in surprise. "Who are you?" he demanded. "This is the end," Diana said, and advanced. Ludendorff was ready. He produced 2 small canisters and inhaled at least one of them. The gas seemed to invigorate him. His muscles tensed, and his eyes flashed with feral energy. "I have work to do," he sneered, and threw a heavy console at Diana. The blow caught her off balance and knocked her down. Ludendorff drew a pistol and fired. Diana rose and snapped her bracelets of submission together, deflecting the bullets with a ring of brilliant force. She closed the distance in a heartbeat. Though the gas had amplified Ludendorff's strength, it hadn't granted him training to match an Amazon warrior. A few precise strikes brought him to his knees. "I am Diana of Themyscira," she intoned, "daughter of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons." She raised her arms and channeled the bracelet's power. A fierce, righteous light flared from the bracelets and swept over Ludendorff, tearing him apart in an instant. When the light faded, the man who had been driving the escalation lay annihilated. Diana breathed out, the weight of the campaign seeming to lift. She turned to Li Ming and smiled. "It's over. The human world." "Not yet," Li Ming interrupted. At first she thought he was joking, then she heard the distant bustle of the camp continuing, the crews still preparing the bomber as if nothing had changed. She stared, stunned. "No, that can't be. We killed Ares, or at least the man who was forcing the war. Killing a god of war should stop this. Everything should end." Li Ming stepped closer and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're thinking like a myth," he said softly. "Humans are the most complicated creatures. Not all will lay down their arms because a single leader dies." Diana shook her head, conflicted. "But the stories, gods can be like Ares, turning against family. How can humans not have the same flaws?" He smiled faintly. "They can. Some will kill for resources, for prejudice, for belief. Others will risk everything to save strangers. We've seen both." Diana remembered a mother she had met earlier who refused to give up on her child even in the worst conditions, and a spark of hope warmed her chest. "Do you believe humanity can be saved?" she asked. Li Ming's eyes softened. "Do you know what I believed at first?" he asked. "Only in myself. Then I met you, and something else became clear." "What?" "Love," he replied. He didn't sound like he was being theatrical. It was simply true. "Humans have good and bad. I protect the good, even if my methods are messy. Whether humanity is worth saving wasn't the question for me. I only needed to be able to look at myself in the mirror. I don't do it for thanks." Diana let that sink in. She had come to pity the gentle, brave, striving humans she'd seen. She resolved anew to defend them, and she felt something else, a warmth toward the man beside her that had deepened in ways she had not expected. Before she could say more, Li Ming's expression changed. "We're not done," he said. Diana sprang into battle readiness, steel and resolve returning. Lightning gathered in Li Ming's palm, shaping into a spear. He hurled it toward the perimeter, but halfway through its flight, another bolt of pure lightning struck from the distance and intersected it. The 2 crackling energies twined for a heartbeat, then exploded in a sheet of blue-white light. When the smoke cleared at the edge of the tarmac, a man stood there, tall, improbably composed, dressed like a gentleman in a dark suit. He smiled, and the camp seemed to tense as if at a cue. Diana's breath hitched. The figure looked nothing like the robed war god of myth, but there was a ferocity beneath the civility that made her blood run cold. "Ares," she said, voice low and certain. "Chapter 216, The Great Battle. Ah, I'm dead." "Humans aren't worth saving, Diana," Ares said as he flew down. "Zeus gave them the world to live on, and what did they do with it? They've been destroying it, day after day. I tried to warn the other gods about humanity's depravity, but no one listened," Ares went on, pressing his argument. He didn't want to kill Diana. He wanted her to understand, to join him. "You've seen this war, Diana. You know what humans can do. Stand with me, and together we can end the pain, the suffering, the destruction." After Li Ming's words, Diana was no longer uncertain. She didn't hesitate. "I will never stand with you." She lashed out with the lasso of truth, but Ares dodged. His face cooled. "Then I will have to kill you all," he said. He tore up a slab of earth with one hand to block Diana's divine strike and called down lightning to neutralize the electric bolt Li Ming had fired. "Strange, a human with such strength," Ares murmured, surprised by Li Ming. "But only a god can kill another god. You're wasting yourself." "Where there's a will, there's a way," Li Ming replied, and didn't stop attacking. His source power didn't have the divine quality of the gods, and for the moment it couldn't reach the intensity needed to slay Ares, but it could hurt him. Ares found himself under a relentless two-person assault from Diana and Li Ming. Diana distracted him with the lasso of truth, drawing his attention, and Li Ming followed up with an electrical strike to Ares' chest. Diana bound his ankle with the lasso and slammed him to the ground. Li Ming advanced, wrapped in dark blue source power as both a fence and shield. He leaped in front of Ares and drove a solid punch into his face, sending Ares' head into the earth and carving out a crater. No blood. Li Ming was sure he'd hit with everything he had, but Ares barely bled, divine protection, of course. Ares' body erupted with divine power and threw Li Ming back. Diana snatched him up with the lasso. "Are you all right?" she asked, frantic. "I'm fine," Li Ming lied through a wince. "He's using his full strength." Diana frowned. Ares was the god of war. His power, even diminished, was fearsome. "Don't worry, I haven't used my full strength yet," Li Ming added softly and quickly loosened the lasso wound around himself. His voice almost slipped. Diana, full of fighting spirit and without suspicion, leapt at Ares again. Li Ming drew the Gotham scepter and felt power surge through him. Diana struck out, but Ares countered with lightning. He was Zeus's son, after all. His command of lightning far outmatched Diana's few days of training. In the original story, Ares had held back to try to win Diana over, only to be struck fatally later, but now he fought seriously and was stronger than she was. Still, Li Ming made a difference. He opened the mirror dimension and trapped Ares, tilting the space until planes, missiles, and control towers fell upon him with thunderous crashes. Ares staggered under the barrage. Li Ming then used the crimson bands of Sidorak to bind him and thrust the Gotham Scepter's staff sword at Ares. Divine power flared. Ares shattered the bands and grabbed the staff sword. He tried to snap it, but the weapon was reinforced by the Lord's attunement and Li Ming's source power. Li Ming jabbed at Ares' abdomen with the sword sheath, forcing him to let go, then closed into melee. Ares was a consummate warrior and not afraid of close quarters. Two longswords formed in his hands to meet Li Ming. But Li Ming was no slouch either. His fighting level 10 and staff sword mastery level 10 kept him competitive. They traded blows, each meeting the other's strikes. Li Ming had another purpose in getting in close. Gods bleed too. Taking a hit to create an opening, Li Ming slashed across Ares' face. Blood spattered. Li Ming staggered back and spat blood of his own. His left shoulder had been pierced by Ares, but seeing blood on Ares' face brought a small smile. He had achieved what he wanted. "Abyss analysis," he whispered, trying to glean whatever he could from Ares' bloodline. Progress crawled, analyzing 0.01%. The analysis was agonizingly slow. Enraged at being wounded by a human, Ares unleashed a burst of lightning that shook the mirror dimension itself. Li Ming could keep the mirror dimension stable, but he chose to release it. The structure of his spell, unsupported for a moment, shattered with a tremendous boom and sent him flying. He was battered and bleeding, but his self-healing ability, B rank, stitched him back together quickly. He rested on the ground, catching his breath. Diana rushed to him, but he waved her off. She was decisive. She threw herself in front of Ares' next move, freeing herself from the remaining restraints to block his strike. Ares had stopped to go for a finishing blow. He crushed a tank into Ironhide, wrapping Diana tightly and immobilizing her, then called down a lethal bolt of divine lightning aimed straight at her. At that instant, Li Ming threw himself between them. "No!" Diana called out, but he didn't hesitate. He used his own body as a shield. The lightning tore through him, blasting a huge hole through his chest. He took the full force but managed to deflect the attack, so Diana remained unharmed. Diana!" Li Ming coughed, spitting blood. His breathing was ragged, his voice barely there. "Remember what I taught you, cough, infuse love into divine power. Only then can you defeat Ares." His face, streaked with blood, twisted into a bloody smile. I love you until death. Then his head lolled to the side and he fell still. Diana was shattered. Grief and fury washed over her, and a sudden immense divine power burst from her. The bindings crumbled. Lie, she screamed as her true power erupted, breaking her free. Thanks to Shadow Dancing with Me, Fiery Flames, and O Takugoto for their monthly ticket support. Chapter 217, The Curtain Falls on the God of War. For Li Ming, the most agonizing thing at that moment was forcing his self-healing ability to stay suppressed with source power, keeping the enormous hole in his chest from sealing too quickly while also making sure he didn't actually die. The wound was fake, of course. He had even withdrawn his source power from his exterior, so Ares' blow would appear to have broken through his defenses. What was a major battle without a hero sacrificing himself to save the beauty? Besides, Li Ming's source power intensity was still inferior to divine power. He lacked any divine attributes and couldn't possibly kill Ares. Continuing to fight would only turn into a war of attrition, where neither could finish the other. It was better to let Diana take over. In the original plot, Diana's outburst had been triggered by Steve's sacrifice. Now, with Li Ming sacrificing himself to save her, and with everything he had taught her, Diana's emotions surged, and she unleashed twice her normal strength. She crossed her arms over Li Ming, and Ares' divine power, which had felt unstoppable until then, suddenly met something soft and unyielding. It halted about 30 centimeters from Diana's wrists. Ah! She roared. The force pushed Ares back, sending him flying until he crashed through a control tower and skidded to a stop. Impossible. Only then did Ares have time to harden his divine power into a full suit of armor. He shaped the surrounding metal into a cloud of long blades and launched himself at Diana. But before the dense spears could reach her, they vanished as if hitting a transparent shield. Diana charged, flipped Ares through the air, grabbed him, and began to pummel him. Ares tried to fight back, but Diana's strength in that moment was unstoppable. He could only try to defend. Hiss! One of my front teeth is about to fall out, Ares managed between blows. Li Ming squinted at the battlefield. Diana had shed her previous gentleness and loveliness. She was ferocious. He winced at the sight of Ares' helmet smashed to pieces. If Diana realized he'd faked his death, she might give him an equally vicious beating later. He hoped he could take it. Humans are not worth saving, Ares spat as he took a blow. I never forced them to use weapons or gas, Ares added, attempting to distract. It was their own choice. Diana paused, anger flickering in her expression. Ares' heart leapt. He tried to pull away, but Diana spoke quietly. It's not about worth. As long as I have a clear conscience and follow my heart, that's enough. Realizing she might be letting him go, Ares summoned a giant spear of lightning from the sky and hurled it. Diana met it with her bracelets of submission. The lightning was absorbed into her divine power, and suddenly bolts crackled across her hands, Zeus's power within her flaring to life. And I choose to believe in love. Diana closed her eyes and rose into the air, memories rushing through her, soldiers fighting in blood-soaked fields, villains rampaging, mothers clinging to hope, generals seeking glory, and countless moments with Li Ming. His teachings echoed through her, and she poured all of those emotions into her divine power. Ares unleashed lightning and raw divine force at her, but Diana absorbed it all. The electricity danced over her body and then concentrated into a single blinding strike. Goodbye, brother, she whispered. She opened her eyes and poured every ounce of love and hatred into the attack. The lightning hit Ares with impossible speed and force. Boom. The spot where Ares had stood erupted. After a blinding white flash, there was nothing left, only Diana, slowly descending alone. A system chime sounded in Li Ming's ears. Ding, main quest completed. Do you wish to return? No return. How much longer can I stay here? Li Ming asked. Ding, maximum stay duration is 7 days, the voice replied. Of course, Li Ming chose to stay. Diana ran to him, and he closed his eyes, only to realize, to his mild alarm, that the hole in his chest had already healed. Diana noticed immediately. She knelt and checked his heartbeat, then cried out, You're alive! Cough, I took a healing potion. Li Ming croaked, struggling to open his eyes. Diana wasn't fooled. Quietly, she looped the lasso of truth around his wrist and asked again, Really? Fake. I'm perfectly fine. I provoked your outburst on purpose to kill Ares. Li Ming began, then realized she still had the lasso and quickly yanked it off. You really are. Too much. Diana stood, cheeks flushed. For a moment, Li Ming feared she'd be livid and punish him at leisure. Instead, she pulled him up and hugged him tightly. You're okay. That's wonderful. Her voice trembled with relief. She had truly believed she'd lost him. I thought you'd be really angry, Li Ming admitted. Diana looked up into his face and gave him a warm, slightly reproachful smile. I was a little at first, but the thought of getting you back after losing you made me too happy to stay angry. She snuggled against him. Li Ming felt the sincerity in her embrace. She fit his ideal. Considerate, generous, steadfast, never petulant, always thinking of him, and powerful enough not to be a burden. They held each other, feeling one another's heartbeats, only letting go after a long time. Don't use the lasso of truth on me again, Li Ming said, frowning. All right, Diana agreed readily, giving up an artifact many would covet for the sake of trust. They smiled at each other, wrapped in the fragile calm, until a soldier came running in and fired. Li Ming didn't flinch. He extended a steady hand. The bullet froze mid-air. Using 2x supersonic speed, he had tracked the projectile's trajectory, and with source power attached to his telekinetic hold, he reversed the bullet's course. It streaked back at even greater velocity and punched through the soldier's head. Its momentum unchanged, Li Ming bent its path with curved shot, guiding the bullet through the ranks of German troops like Yondu's arrow, weaving between armor and weaponry under the combined pull of telekinesis and source power. One by one, the soldiers fell. The bullet finally slammed into the camp's ammunition depot and detonated. Boom! A chain of explosions ignited the entire camp, flames roaring high and lighting Diana's face in a fierce crimson glow that somehow made her more beautiful. Li Ming drew her close and kissed her. The battlefield burned around them as the curtain fell on the god of war. Thanks to Book Friend 2017-062225-19749 and to the two great supporters, Yujiwu, for their monthly ticket support. Salute. 218, Ares' bloodline. Within 2 days, the German emperor agreed to sign the armistice, bringing an end to the war that had reshaped the world's balance of power. Of course, it was only a brief calm before a larger storm, and none of it had anything to do with Li Ming. He couldn't change the future world order. Time to go back. Inside the hotel, Diana kissed him goodbye and stepped outside. Li Ming adjusted his waist. The strength of a demigod was terrifying. He followed her out and noticed the other guests showed no sign of alarm. He breathed a quiet sigh of relief. Fortunately, there was the mirror dimension. With Ares eliminated and Diana unfamiliar with human society, she had no intention of staying away long. When Diana idly looped her lasso of truth around a drifting cloud, Li Ming decided it was pointless to keep hiding. He opened a shimmering spatial gate. A portal, Diana exclaimed in surprise. Only then did she realize Li Ming had asked her to carry him earlier more for the convenience than anything else. Naughty, she scolded. Li Ming smiled and said nothing. He was already fond enough to be shameless. Diana couldn't get off the pirate ship, so Li Ming didn't return straight to Paradise Island. He spent 2 more days showing her around the human world before they went back. Seeing Diana home safe, Hippolyta was pleased, but she also sensed something different. She looked at Li Ming with a complicated expression, as if Diana's safety might not be absolute. She kept her thoughts to herself. After Diana whispered that Li Ming had no other women and was a fine man, Hippolyta, accustomed to the scandalous tales of the gods, approved. Still, the match would have to wait. You're from 70 years in the future? When Li Ming confessed, Diana gasped. She had known he was mysterious, but not this much. So, are you going back? She asked. Reluctant. Li Ming nodded. 4 days, he said apologetically. I'm sorry, Diana. Before he could finish, she interrupted, worried. Will you still remember me when you go? Of course, he answered. Good, she smiled. I'll wait for you. Li Ming felt the weight of those simple words. 70 years was nothing to Diana's millennia, but he knew how hard it would be for her. He drew her into his arms. But what if I miss you? Diana's eyes went soft. Li Ming thought of something and said, Wait a moment. He opened a portal to the edge of Paradise Island's protective shield, stepped out, then opened another to the human world, and returned a little while later. He handed her a single flower and a small pouch of seeds. "Roses," he said. "They stand for longing. If you miss me, plant one of these on Paradise Island." "Seeing the flowers will mean I'm with you," she murmured, clutching the seeds. They spent the rest of the time talking. Li Ming told her about his life in Gotham, Penguin, Bruce, everything up to the moment they met, making Diana's eyes light up. When she eagerly suggested she could meet him as a child, he stopped her. "No, you can't meet me earlier. It could change everything, and I might not come back." Diana straightened as if making a vow. "Then I won't leave. I'll wait for you to find me." Li Ming softened. "You can come to Gotham in November 1989 to look for me," he said, "but I won't recognize you then. And don't tell me anything about 1918. "Okay," she agreed readily. Then she hesitated. "What if you don't believe me?" "You just have to say Mysterio," Li Ming smiled. "I'll understand." "Mysterio," she repeated, pleased by the odd little password. Li Ming remembered their first meeting and laughed inwardly. The world turned, fashions and rumors came and went, but the legend of Mysterio would live on in his memory. Together they persuaded Queen Hippolyta to open lines of communication with Atlantis so Paradise Island could better cope with future crises. Hippolyta, aware now that Li Ming was from the future, took his words seriously. She had felt the gap between Paradise Island and mankind at the coastline and agreed to diplomatic contact, though she rejected the idea of bringing technology to the island. "Paradise Island is the last remnant left by the gods. We must uphold our traditions," she said, and Li Ming stopped trying to argue. The next major clash on the island would come when Steppenwolf tried to take a mother box. There was no need to rush preparations now. As his time on the island drew to a close, Li Ming received good news from his analysis interface. The Ares bloodline analysis had completed. It had been stuck at 0.01% for a long time. He had even considered using probability manipulation to speed it up, but privileges couldn't be forced. Unexpectedly, while he stayed on Paradise Island, the progress suddenly accelerated. He steeled himself and opened the result. Given the Scarlet Witch bloodline precedent and that the blood came from a weakened Ares, he had expected modest gains. There was still a surprise. Quality: Legendary type bloodline. Effect: Spirit plus 20, Constitution plus 45. Grants the God of War power upon activation. God of War power: the larger the scale of war in the current world, the greater the divine power bonus. It wasn't just raw stat boosts. Ares' conceptual ability had been analyzed. Without a divine title or seat, Li Ming could still legitimately claim the mantle of a god of war. Ares had exercised influence by suggestion and manipulation rather than starting wars himself. But Li Ming was different. He was selfish by nature. He could be benevolent if his safety was secure, but when threatened, he would not hesitate to strike to protect himself. He already commanded 4 legions and, if needed, could ignite large-scale conflict to stack buffs quickly. Excellent. Li Ming activated Ares' bloodline and added another trump card to his arsenal. Before he left, he gave Diana a human world surname she could use: Prince. She refused to travel to the human world without him, but he told her the November 1989 plan again. Their time together ended much too soon. No matter how reluctant he felt, he had to say goodbye. Diana watched him walk into the shimmering portal. After a long pause, she planted the first rose seed on Paradise Island. Chapter 219, Temporal Teleportation Gate Successfully Enhanced Scanning. Scan complete. The Abyss Favored One is not injured and requires no treatment. Main quest: Time Traveler has been completed. Overall quest rating S. Rewards obtained: 20,000 points, 5 free attribute points, 1 limited rule fusion enhancement. Li Ming had assumed this special quest wouldn't give points or attribute rewards, but the Abyss hadn't withheld them. His physique was still his weakest attribute, but because mental attributes were harder to raise, he put his free points into mental power. Then he checked the critical part: preconditions for temporal teleportation gate enhancement. Time travel enhancement completed. Space travel enhancement not completed. Traveled to the past once completed. Traveled to the future once completed. Traveled to a parallel dimension once completed. According to the Abyss's conditions, he only needed to improve his space travel ability to achieve the one-step enhancement for the temporal teleportation gate. I'm ready, Li Ming exclaimed with childish excitement. Ding! Merging and enhancing. This time, the merging took a little longer than before, and Li Ming grew a touch anxious, but he waited patiently. 10 minutes passed. Isn't this taking a bit long? He muttered. The abyss had promised, though, and it kept its word. 20 minutes later, ding! Temporal teleportation gate successfully enhanced. The notification felt louder than usual. Li Ming grinned and gave a thumbs up. He closed his eyes and let the new knowledge wash over him, the refined methods for traveling through parallel universes. It took more energy than he'd initially thought, but it was still acceptable. Ding! The effect of the temporal teleportation gate is determined by the user's comprehensive strength. Li Ming understood. Opening a teleportation gate required energy. Higher personal strength and more powerful reserves meant a better gate and a more stable transit. Now that he could reliably visit parallel timelines, his first thought was pragmatic and opportunistic. He could go back to the Marvel world's past timeline and get the Infinity Stones. Even if the stones only worked in the Marvel universe, he already had a plan. Upgrade his analysis privilege. Analysis could grant bloodlines and could, in theory, let him analyze the Infinity Stones' abilities so he could use them outside their native universe. He needed the Abyss's cooperation for the privilege upgrade. Abyss, he asked in the pure white space, if I travel to a parallel universe, will I also have a chance to obtain world origin? Ding! Obtaining world origin requires the favored one to complete a designated quest. Li Ming thought for a moment. A quest requirement gave him leverage, and since parallel worlds weren't the Abyss's quest worlds, failing wouldn't bring Abyss penalties. If I help you complete a quest as compensation, can I specifically receive the analysis privilege upgrade as a reward? He asked with a mischievous grin. The Abyss answered. Ding! Rewards must be issued through the quest world channel. After completing the designated quest, if you achieve an A rank rating or above in the next quest world, you will receive the privilege upgrade reward. The deal was struck. The Abyss set an implicit condition. Li Ming's next assignment would be in a faction confrontation, and to earn an A rank, he would have to go beyond mere completion. He'd have to eliminate several Reincarnators. It was the Abyss's assurance that he wouldn't hold back. Li Ming wasn't losing anything. He planned to visit a parallel world anyway, and he would not be shy in the faction fight. The fewer people who knew about him, the longer he could develop in secret. After leaving the white space, Li Ming contacted the Jerome Squad. They were about to enter their third quest world and had already been to Abyss space. Per his instructions, they had kept his existence secret, but they'd run into trouble with the Abyss Reincarnators. Fish, annoyed by interrogation, had mocked them as rats in a gutter, and that insult enraged many of the Abyss Reincarnators. Li Ming's reply had been simple, well said. He even transferred 2,000 points to Fish as a reward. Li Ming had sided with his agents and with the Abyss. He had no interest in the Jerome Squad getting entangled with that dangerous group. According to Mad Hatter's report, Fish spent the 2,000 points on a Mark II suit and several batteries, so in effect, the points circled back to Li Ming. All members of the Jerome Squad were Li Ming's informants. They regularly tattled on one another. If they had a group chat, the 5 of them would have generated a dozen windows of gossip within an hour. Li Ming checked his resources. Source Power Application 11.4 required 2.45 million points. He already had over 1.9 million and expected to hit the target by the end of this stay. With that in mind, he entered the Resident Evil world to make his first parallel timeline jump. Of his 3 exclusive worlds, Resident Evil was the least dangerous, and if anything went wrong, he could handle it. Still in Raccoon City, Li Ming activated his source power. After a brief moment to calibrate, he opened a portal to a parallel dimension 10 years in the past. When he stepped through, the abandoned city transformed before his eyes into a place teeming with life. He checked himself, normal. Abyss? He called softly. Ding! The current world's identification number is 2002-305-1. Li Ming recognized the Resident Evil world's ID as 2002-305. He had indeed landed in a parallel branch. What's the quest? He asked, true to his word. Ding! World Origin quest activated. Reverse World Destiny. Prevent the outbreak of the resident evil. He absorbed the objective immediately. Can I obtain world origin by changing the world's trajectory? He queried. Ding! Yes, this is one way to obtain world origin. Li Ming filed that away for future use. His source power would eventually evolve into world origin, and every route to it mattered. The quest itself was straightforward for him. He issued orders with quiet efficiency. Sunday, have you detected the Red Queen? Detected, sir. Control her. Already under control. Destroy all T-virus data. Eliminate all researchers and Umbrella Corporation leadership who know about the T-virus. Li Ming produced a green test tube from his personal center. It contained a T-virus antidote Red Queen had manufactured. She had already created several copies at his instruction. He smashed the vial on the ground and clapped his hands. Done. Thanks to Yuhua Dengxian 233, Div Mengtu, and Limu Gen for their monthly ticket support. Chapter 220, Scouring Wakanda Sunday moved quickly. With the Red Queen controlling Umbrella Corporation's resources, the disruption was significant, but it didn't take long for Sunday to eliminate everyone connected to the T-virus. With the virus gone and every person who knew about it or could have developed it neutralized, a biochemical catastrophe would no longer occur in this world. The Abyss's mission requirements were perfectly satisfied. Li Ming didn't linger. There was nothing left of value for him in this timeline. Each jump between parallel timelines led to a new world. None could serve as the logistical base his exclusive world provided. Unattached, he chose to return. He immediately checked how much the Abyss had gained. The Abyss's harvest directly affected his future treatment. Only by increasing his own value could he expect the Abyss to keep opening back doors for him. Ding. The Abyss strongly recommends frequently activating World Origin missions to accelerate privilege upgrade progress. The Abyss's meaning was clear. As long as he contributed enough World Origin, prices were negotiable. What about the next mission's evaluation? Li Ming asked. Ding, if the next mission world receives a C-grade rating or above, you will receive a specified privilege upgrade reward. The mission requirement dropped from A to C. The Abyss's harvest had been far larger than he'd expected. The Abyss was pleased, and Li Ming was too. This gave him more leverage. But after each use of the parallel timeline portal, there was a cooldown before it could be used again in the same world, and Li Ming's current strength temporarily limited his frequency of use. He decided to act while he could. He returned to the Marvel world and initiated another jump, this time forward by 1 month, mostly to confirm one thing. Watu, are you there? Using the method the Watcher had left him, Li Ming called out. Soon a giant, bald figure with glowing white eyes appeared. Who are you? How do you know me? Watu looked puzzled. In his long existence, no stranger had ever called him by name. Nothing. Goodbye? Li Ming didn't linger. He left Watu bewildered, stroking his bald head. The experiment had worked. The timeline portal sent him into a completely different branch. That was ideal. He didn't want anyone who knew him to recognize him in a new timeline. That would complicate certain non-heroic activities. Satisfied, Li Ming materialized near Wakanda, slipping underwater to bypass the nation's protective shield. Wakanda had plenty of high tech, but its most crucial defense, a shield, wasn't waterproof and offered no protection below ground. It only defended the surface. The design flaw was absurd. Wakanda, peaceful for less than 2 years, was about to meet a new disaster. An ear-piercing alarm echoed through the nation. Queen Ramonda rushed to find Princess Shuri. Who's invading? Iron Man, Shuri answered, incredulous. Then she added with growing alarm, and Strange. What? Queen Ramonda couldn't believe it. If her memory served, Iron Man was dead, and Strange was supposed to be a superhero. Assemble the army now. But Shuri shook her head, her expression grim. The army has already collapsed. The enemy has over 200 Iron Man armors and countless ground robots, some of them models we've never seen. The army is defenseless. They exchanged a look. An enemy had done what even Thanos' forces could not do. In just over 10 minutes, this force had overrun Wakanda. Li Ming had coveted Wakanda's vibranium for a long time. In his main world, he couldn't act because of his superhero identity. In this parallel universe, he wouldn't hesitate. Wakanda's military was nothing against him. He unleashed his Iron Man Legion, Terminator Legion, and Robot Legion, and rapidly overran the country. Elite Wakandan forces, heroes like Okoye, were the only real threats. Everything else crumbled before the three legions. The vibranium reserves were swept clean. All Wakandan technology was copied. Research on the heart-shaped herb was seized. He plundered every item of value except those too large to move. Seeing the dark-skinned citizens glare at him with hatred didn't slow him. There was too much to carry. He opened a portal and left. He returned to his own staging area, laden with loot. That was the proper way to use parallel timelines. With Wakanda's defenses neutralized, the rest of the world, constantly watching, would descend like hyenas, carving the nation apart. Better that he had already taken what he wanted. Li Ming didn't run the Abyss's world origin mission this time. Rewards taken too easily were less cherished. Still, the Abyss benefited. Wakanda's fall shifted the storyline enough to bring in a significant amount of world origin. He left the bulk of the vibranium at the T-Virus factory, where he'd been mining underwater before. There was plenty left from previous operations. However, he dumped the Wakandan technologies, research data, and several Black Panther suits into the T-Virus world for Sunday to study. Adding those to Li Ming's upgraded Iron Man armor and legions would further boost his strength. Afterwards, Li Ming returned to Kamartaj to train in magic under Supreme Strange. Because he was still in cooldown, he didn't tell Strange that he had found a way to help him. Strange, however, warned him to be careful, not to rush to help others and put himself in danger. Li Ming thought about how he'd stormed Wakanda and been accused by its people, and he readily agreed with Strange's caution. 4 months later, Li Ming's points reached 2.6 million. He visited the space and redeemed Source Power Application Elva 4. The knowledge from Level 3 had already helped him use his mental powers more skillfully. Level 4 not only boosted efficiency further, it also unlocked knowledge in other fields. "This is the soul?" Li Ming muttered, hovering in midair as he watched his own body sitting before him. Seeing himself from that perspective felt strange. Source Power Application Level 4 revealed many soul-related techniques: soul projection, soul attack, soul protection. Kamartaj had soul-related spells, but Li Ming had avoided using them on himself for fear of unknown risks. Now he had filled that gap. He checked the cost of Source Power Application L5, 28 million points, roughly the same as Source Power Advancement L5. It would take time to accumulate. Several more months passed. Li Ming grew proficient in LaFour's teachings. His stay at Kamartaj was drawing to a close. He was about to enter his second faction confrontation. Thanks to Liu Junyao for the monthly pass support.